Hello, my friend. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me once again. Tonight, I invite you to settle in, breathe gently, and allow your mind to drift into the quiet world of old northern tales. These are stories whispered across frost and fire, carried through the ages by wind and memory. And now, as you relax and let the world grow softer around you, we will step together into the very first moments of existence, into the dawn before dawn, the silence before silence, the place where time itself had not yet opened its eyes. This is the beginning of Norse mythology. Before anything had shape or name, there was only a vast emptiness known as Ginnungagap. Ginnungagap stretched in all directions, endless and untouched, like a breath held by the universe. It was neither light nor darkness, neither warm nor cold. It simply was a place of absolute stillness, where nothing stirred and nothing dreamed. To the north of this great void lay Niflheim, a realm of deep frost and ancient mist. Niflheim was old even in the first moments of creation, filled with icy rivers that wandered through the gloom. Its winds carried a chill so profound that it seemed to freeze thought itself. 9 rivers flowed from its heart, weaving through darkness, whispering softly as if they were the first stirrings of sound in an otherwise mute cosmos. These rivers fed the wellspring of freezing mists, rising and spreading toward the edge of Ginnungagap. Far to the south, opposite this world of frost, burned Muspelheim. Muspelheim blazed with elemental fire, glowing like the heartbeat of a newborn cosmos. Its flames leapt upward like fiery serpents, casting warm sparks into the emptiness between realms. There, the heat pulsed and roared, alive with a force so ancient that even the gods who would one day walk the world could not fully comprehend it. The fire giant Surtur stood as its guardian, his sword burning brighter than suns that would come much later. The breath of Muspelheim rolled outward, a soft but relentless wave of warmth. Slowly, silently, the heat drifted northward across the void, where it met the frozen mists that poured from Niflheim. In that place, where frost met fire, the first miracle took shape. The icy rivers hardened, cracked, and began to melt beneath the touch of warmth. Drips of water fell into the stillness. Steam rose gently like early morning fog. Layer by layer, the great sheets of ice dissolved, revealing within them the shape of a massive being. From the softened ice emerged Ymir, the first of all giants. He did not awaken at once. Instead, he slept peacefully in the cradle of thawing frost, as if waiting for the universe to invite him into consciousness. When finally he stirred, the silence of Ginnungagap trembled. His breath was deep and heavy, echoing across the emptiness. Ymir was immense, larger than mountains, older than the idea of time. Some say that from the sweat beneath his arms, other beings formed vast frost giants, powerful and wild. Life emerged from him effortlessly, as if carried by the natural rhythm of creation. But Ymir was not the only one born from the melting ice. As the warmth continued its gentle work, shaping and softening, another figure came forth. A great cosmic cow named Audumla appeared, her coat smooth and pale like starlit snow. Audumla brought nourishment into the empty world. 4 rivers of milk flowed from her, rich and warm, providing life to Ymir and sustaining the early sparks of existence. Audumla herself fed by licking the salty ice at the edge of Ginnungagap. Slowly, with each stroke of her tongue, something new emerged from the frozen stone. From the ice revealed by Audhumla's patient licking came Buri, the first of the gods. Tall, strong, and noble, Buri stood as a new kind of being in the awakening world. Through him began a lineage that would eventually shape the fate of all realms. Buri had a son named Bor, and Bor took as his partner the giantess Bestla. Together they brought forth 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. The 3 brothers grew in the still waking world, their eyes wide with wonder at the vast emptiness surrounding them. They walked across the quiet expanses of Ginnungagap, learning its silence, feeling its ancient loneliness. Yet within their hearts stirred a desire for something more, something with shape, purpose, and meaning. A world not of emptiness, but of life. That longing grew stronger with each passing moment, until the brothers knew that creation required a catalyst, and that catalyst was Ymir. Ymir, enormous and ancient, had filled the early realm with the chaotic offspring of giants. But chaos alone could not shape a stable world, and so Odin, Vili, and Ve made a choice that would define all ages to come. They confronted Ymir in the heart of the void. What followed was less a battle and more an act of cosmic transformation, the moment where destruction and creation intertwined as one. Ymir fell beneath their divine will, and his immense body became the foundation for the universe. From his blood poured endless oceans, filling the space between lands. From his flesh rose the solid earth, the ground upon which future footsteps would fall. His bones became mountains, tall and steady, touching the first whispers of sky. His teeth and broken fragments of bone became cliffs and stones. His hair spread across the world as forests, quiet and dark and full of promise. And from his vast skull, the brothers created the dome of the heavens, shaping it carefully, gently. Like cupping hands around a fragile flame, they set sparks from Muspelheim across the sky, creating the stars. The sun and moon were given their paths, steady and reliable, so that day and night might cradle the world in rhythm. With Ymir's body transformed, the brothers shaped the first lands, Midgard, the realm for mortals yet to come. They constructed it as a sanctuary surrounded by the vast oceans formed from Ymir's blood. Above it, they built Asgard, the home of the gods, a realm bathed in light and strength. Far away, they placed the realms of giants, dwarves, elves, and spirits, each with its own purpose and nature. The great ash tree Yggdrasil grew at the center of everything, its roots reaching into all worlds. Its branches spread into the heavens, holding the realms together like threads in a sacred tapestry. But the world, though beautiful, was empty. There were mountains and rivers, sky and sun, forests and deep seas, yet no beings walked the land with thought or breath or memory. And so the brothers continued their work. One quiet day, as Odin, Vili, and Ve walked along the shore, they found 2 pieces of drifting wood washed onto the sand. One piece was ash, strong and upright. The other was elm, gentle and supple. The brothers paused, sensing potential within these simple shapes. Odin placed his hand upon the wood and breathed the gift of life into it. Vili granted the spark of consciousness and the ability to think. Ve shaped their senses, sight, hearing, and speech, so they might experience the world fully. The ashwood became Ask, the first man. The elmwood became Embla, the first woman. Together they opened their eyes to the soft light of the newly formed world. Their first breath drifted gently into the air, a quiet testimony to the miracle of existence. Ask and Embla felt the cool touch of the wind, the warmth of the sun, and the comforting rhythm of the ocean's tide. They stood hand in hand, fragile yet full of promise. From them, all human beings would descend. Through them, the gods ensured that Midgard would never again be empty. As the early world settled into its harmony, other beings took shape. From the rotting flesh of Ymir, tiny forms stirred deep beneath the earth. These small creatures, once like larvae, grew into the dwarves, clever, skilled, and destined to become the greatest craftsmen of all realms. They built their homes in Svartalfheim, beneath stone and shadow, where they shaped metal and magic with equal mastery. Above them lived the light elves in Alfheim, luminous and graceful, beings of beauty and inspiration. They shimmered like sunlight reflected in water, embodying gentleness and creativity. In Jotunheim, the giants, the descendants of Ymir, made their home. They were powerful, unpredictable, and vast in number. Though they would one day stand as rivals to the gods, in these early moments they were simply another part of the great design. With humans, gods, giants, elves, and dwarves all taking their places, the 9 realms finally began to awaken. Each realm pulsed with its own unique rhythm. Each corner of existence hummed with possibility, and the great tree Yggdrasil carried the weight of all worlds, its branches whispering secrets to the winds that passed through them. Odin watched the realms with thoughtful eyes. Vili felt their potential within his heart. Ve sensed the threads of destiny beginning to form. The work of creation was complete, but the story of the cosmos had only just begun. And as the light of the first days spread across the new world, a gentle calm settled over everything. The silence of the void had transformed into the soft pulse of life. From the cold stillness of Niflheim to the burning heartbeat of Muspelheim, from the quiet shores of Midgard to the halls of Asgard high above, the universe, at last, was awake. And with that awakening came the promise of countless tales, tales of gods and giants, of love and betrayal, of courage and downfall. But for now, for this moment, all is quiet, all is peaceful, all is waiting. Rest gently, my friend, as we leave the first chapter of creation behind. The next part of the story awaits slowly, patiently, like a dawn rising over distant northern mountains. Tonight, we continue our quiet journey through the ancient world of Norse creation. In the first chapter, we watch the cosmos awaken from silence, shaped by the hands of Odin, Vili, and Ve. The void of Ginnungagap transformed into mountains, seas, forests, and sky. Now, with the world formed and life beginning to breathe, it is time to wander deeper. It is time to explore the 9 realms. 9 distinct worlds, each resting upon or within the great tree Yggdrasil, a tree so vast and ancient that its roots and branches connect every corner of existence. As you listen, I invite you to relax your shoulders, soften your breath, and let your imagination drift among these realms. One by one, we will move slowly, gently, as if carried by a calm northern wind. At the very top of the cosmos lies Asgard, the home of the Aesir gods. Asgard stands high above the world of humans, shining like a distant star. Its walls are tall and gleaming, built by divine hands and strengthened by ancient magic. Inside these walls lie the golden halls of the gods. The largest of them is Valhalla, Odin's great hall, where warriors chosen by Valkyries rest and prepare for the final battle at the end of time. But not all of Asgard is filled with the echoes of swords and shields. Much of it is peaceful, quiet, and filled with gentle light. Rivers glisten softly as they flow under bridges of stone. Fields roll out in calming waves of green and gold. The sound of wind through trees blends with distant hymns sung by goddesses and spirits. Asgard is a place where strength and serenity coexist, where might rests upon a foundation of deep order. It is a realm of clarity, purpose, and watchful peace. And from its highest towers, Odin gazes across the worlds, seeing all that happens beneath the branches of Yggdrasil. Not far from Asgard lies Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir gods. If Asgard is a realm of discipline and power, Vanaheim is a realm of harmony and natural beauty. Here the rivers wander lazily through fertile valleys. Forests stretch peacefully across soft hills. The air is rich with the smell of earth and blooming flowers. The Vanir are gods of fertility, prosperity, and deep-rooted magic. Their world reflects their gentle strengths. In Vanaheim, there is no rush, no urgency, only the steady rhythm of life. Birdsong fills the mornings, and warm breezes carry the scents of ripe fruit and wet soil. The Vanir tend to the balance of nature, ensuring that each season unfolds in its rightful time. When the Aesir and the Vanir made peace after their ancient war, bridges formed not only between their hearts, but between Asgard and Vanaheim themselves. Today, the two worlds remain connected by bonds of respect, wisdom, and shared destiny. Below those divine realms, nestled between the heavens and the deep-rooted lands, lies Midgard, the home of humankind. Midgard is neither too high nor too low, neither burning nor freezing. It rests in the middle, balanced between extremes. The gods shaped Midgard with great care, surrounding it with a vast ocean to protect its fragile new people. Mountains rise like sleeping giants from the horizon. Valleys cradle rivers that glimmer beneath gentle sunlight. Forests stretch quietly across the land, their leaves rustling like soft whispers. Midgard is a realm of change, where seasons turn from warmth to cold, and where humans learn, build, love, and dream. Unlike the realms of gods or giants, Midgard is tender and vulnerable, yet it is full of wonder sunsets painted in gold, rain that brings new life, and nights adorned with stars that flicker softly like distant spirits. For all its imperfections, Midgard holds a special place in the heart of creation. It is the world where stories unfold slowly, where each human breath becomes a part of the great cosmic song. Far to the east stands Jotunheim, the land of the giants. Jotunheim is wild and untamed, shaped by raw mountains and deep, echoing valleys. The wind here is sharp and restless, carrying the scent of ancient rock and storm-born rain. Rivers crash with great force through jagged terrain, their waters roaring like distant thunder. The giants, descendants of Ymir, roam this rugged land. Some are fierce and chaotic, others are wise, solitary wanderers who live quietly among stone and frost. Jotunheim is not evil, merely unpredictable. It is a world where nature rules with power, where cliffs rise sharply into the mist and snow gathers in silent drifts. Many stories begin in Jotunheim, where gods and giants cross paths, sometimes as enemies, sometimes as uneasy allies. But through it all, the land remains constant in its raw, primal beauty. Toward the far northern edges of creation lies Niflheim. It is a realm of deep frost, older than memory, as cold as the breath of the void. Here, mist flows across the ground like a slow-moving tide. The rivers of ice twist through the darkness, carrying chilling whispers along their paths. Niflheim is quiet, not a peaceful quiet, but the silence of untouched eternity. The air is still, heavy, and ancient. It carries the reminders of the earliest days, when frost first touched fire and creation began to stir. Even now, the heart of Niflheim holds the primordial well, Fergelmir, a source of icy waters that feed the great tree Yggdrasil. From its depths rise cold streams that nourish and sustain the roots of the cosmos. Though desolate, Niflheim remains essential. It is the memory of the world before warmth, before light, before breath. At the opposite end of existence, in the far south, burns Muspelheim. This realm is alive with flame, glowing like molten gold and crimson. The air trembles with heat, sparks leap from rivers of fire, mountains made of smoldering stone crack and shift under the force of constant energy. Muspelheim is a world forever in motion, its flames dancing like living creatures. The fire giants who dwell here are ancient beings, born from the first sparks that leapt from Muspelheim into the empty void. Their leader, Surtur, stands like a dark silhouette against the blazing light, holding a sword that burns with the power to end worlds. And yet, even Muspelheim holds its own kind of stillness, a steady, rhythmic pulse of flame that has existed since the dawn of time. Without its fire, the first ice would not have melted. Without its heat, Ymir would never have awakened. In this way, Muspelheim remains a realm of both destruction and creation. eternally intertwined. High above the middle worlds, touched by early morning light, lies Alfheim. This is the world of the light elves, beings of such beauty and grace that ancient poets struggled to describe them. Alfheim glows with a gentle radiance, as though sunlight lingers forever on its fields. Meadows stretch across the land, filled with flowers of pale gold and silver. Rivers flow with shimmering clarity, reflecting the light of unseen stars. The light elves move through their realm quietly, their steps barely touching the soft earth. They are beings of inspiration and harmony, guiding the arts, dreams, and gentle wonders of the world. Their presence is like a warm breeze on a peaceful spring afternoon. Though rarely seen by humans, their influence often drifts through Midgard in moments of calm beauty, a song carried by the wind, a glimmer of light through the trees, a sudden feeling of hope. Deep beneath the mountains lies Svartalfheim, the world of dwarves. Here, the stone is dark and cool, stretching through endless caverns and tunnels. The air smells of iron, earth, and the warm glow of forge fires. Hammers ring softly against metal, echoing through the underground halls like a heartbeat in the deep. The dwarves work with quiet dedication, crafting wonders from gold, silver, and enchanted stone. Their skill is unmatched, their creations powerful and enduring. Mjolnir, Odin's spear Gungnir, and many treasures of the gods were born from their forges. Svartalfheim is not a gloomy place, despite its shadowed appearance. It is warm with the light of furnaces, alive with the patience of artisans who shape the bones of the earth. Every crafted item carries both strength and care, forged with thoughtfulness that reflects the dwarves' deep respect for their craft. Finally, at the far edges beyond light and living warmth lies Helheim. This realm is neither cruel nor malevolent, despite what stories often claim. It is simply quiet, a place of rest for those who did not die in battle. Here, the air is cool and still. Mist drifts through valleys where soft pale light glows faintly. Helheim stretches like an endless twilight, calm and muted. At its center stands the Hall of Hel, daughter of Loki. Her presence is solemn but steady, as she watches over the souls who come into her care. There is no pain here, only silence. A quiet, gentle stillness where memories settle like falling snow. Though distant from the brighter realms, Helheim remains a vital part of the cosmic balance. It is the place where journeys end softly, like a final breath. Binding all 9 realms together is Yggdrasil, the great ash tree. Its roots stretch deep into ancient wells. Its trunk rises through worlds like a pillar of eternity. Its branches open into the heavens, carrying light, life, and destiny across the cosmos. Yggdrasil is alive with subtle energy. Its leaves tremble with quiet whispers. Creatures wander along its branches, spirits, messengers, and guardians who ensure the balance of creation. The tree feels every movement in every realm, like a pulse that reaches from the deepest shadows to the brightest skies. If you listen closely, you might almost hear it breathing. The soft hum of life, the gentle sigh of worlds turning, the ancient heartbeat of the universe. The 9 realms rest upon this sacred tree, each one unique, each one essential. Together they weave the great tapestry of Norse cosmology. And as you picture them now, glowing Asgard, fertile Vanaheim, humble Midgard, wild Jotunheim, frozen Niflheim, blazing Muspelheim, radiant Alfheim, shadowed Svartalfheim, and quiet Helheim, you may feel the faint sense of standing at the center of something vast and timeless. Every realm has its own stories, its own spirits, its own echoes in the grand design, and through them all, Yggdrasil endures, strong and silent, connecting every breath of existence. This is the cosmos as the Norse people imagined it. Not a single world, but 9, woven together with care. Not chaos, but structure. Not isolation, but connection. Each realm a note in the greater song of creation, a song that will one day rise into thunder and fall into silence. But for now, in the early ages of the world, everything rests in harmony. The 9 realms breathe quietly under the watch of the great tree, and their stories wait patiently for the footsteps of gods, giants, spirits, and men. Rest now in this understanding, my friend. For in the next chapter, the gods will step forward. Odin, Thor, Loki, and others will shape the fate of the realms. But tonight, let the 9 realms settle gently into your imagination, like stars slowly appearing one by one in a calm northern sky. Welcome back, my friend. Settle your breath, loosen your shoulders, and let the world around you soften. Tonight, we drift into a story whispered through time, a story of 2 groups of gods, 2 families shaped from the early fabric of creation, both strong, both wise, both holding roles in the balance of the cosmos. And yet, even in divine realms, harmony can tremble. Tonight, we explore the quiet echoes of a long conflict between the Aesir and the Vanir, a conflict not told with shouts or thunder, but with the slow, cold winds of the north, carrying memories of misunderstanding, transformation, and unity. The Aesir lived in Asgard, a realm of shimmering light and strong halls. They were gods of order, strength, wisdom, and protection. Their leader was Odin, the All-Father, whose single eye saw far into the folds of destiny. Beside him stood Thor, mighty and steadfast, and many others who shaped the fate of worlds. They valued courage, clarity, and the structure that held the 9 realms together. The Vanir lived in Vanaheim, a gentle and fertile land filled with warm breezes and blooming earth. They were gods of nature, abundance, peace, and ancient magic. They carried the rhythm of seasons in their veins. They guided growth, renewal, and prosperity. Their hearts were soft, and their wisdom deep, reaching into old memories of the earth itself. Though both families of gods cared for the balance of the 9 realms, their ways differed. Their views of magic, fate, and power did not always align, and like 2 rivers meeting in the same valley, tensions slowly grew. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, like frost forming on a window during a long winter night. The moment that stirred the conflict began with a woman named Gullveig. She wandered into Asgard one day, carrying with her a mysterious warmth. She spoke of magic older than the Aesir knew, magic of desire, prosperity, beauty, and the deep abundance of nature. Gullveig radiated charm and presence, and the gods of Asgard felt uneasy around her. Her words seemed too sweet, her power too subtle, her intentions too unclear. They feared she possessed secrets not meant for Asgard, and fear, even among gods, can cast long shadows. The Aesir grew suspicious of Gullveig. They questioned her loyalties and her strange form of magic, a magic that did not come from runes or battle skill, but from the heart of nature itself. Some say that Gullveig was a goddess of the Vanir, or at least deeply connected to them. Others say she simply carried the same energy that flowed through Vanaheim. But in the end, the Aesir decided they could not trust her. And so, in a moment of deep misunderstanding, they tried to destroy her. They cast her into flames. Her form burned brightly. And for a moment, the Aesir believed the danger had passed. Yet, when the flames faded, Gullveig stepped out unharmed, calm, unshaken, silent as moonlight on snow. The Aesir tried again. A second time, they cast her into fire. A second time, she returned, still serene, still whole. A third time, they attempted to end her. And a third time, she rose from the flames as if reborn. No anger touched her face, no fear, only a quiet certainty. as though she were part of a cycle greater than any attempt to break her. This moment, simple and silent as it was, created a deep wound. The Vanir heard what had happened in Asgard. They heard that one of their own, or at least one deeply connected to their nature, had been rejected and harmed. To them, Gulveig was a symbol of life's mysteries, of the gentle magic that nurtures the world. To see her mistreated in this way was painful. It was a sign that the Aesir did not understand or value the gifts of the Vanir. Misunderstanding grew, and misunderstandings, when left untended, become distance. That distance deepened into suspicion, and suspicion, slowly and softly, turned into a long conflict. Not a loud or chaotic one, but a steady, persistent struggle echoing across the realms like a cold wind brushing through empty fields. The Aesir and the Vanir faced each other with old magic and powerful strength. Both families of gods were resolute, both believed their ways were right. Their values collided like winter meeting spring. The tension that followed spread across the cosmos. It rolled gently through the 9 realms, stirring worry among giants, elves, and dwarves. Even mortals felt it faintly, as if the sky held its breath for too long. The conflict lasted a very long time, long enough that the memories of its beginning faded into the quiet hum of the world. But despite its length, this struggle was never a story of rage. It was a story of 2 perspectives clashing again and again, unable to find common ground. It was a dance of old wills, a slow drift of opposing energies, a reminder that even divine beings can disagree without truly understanding one another. As time passed, both sides realized something profound. Neither group could overcome the other. The Aesir were strong, wise, and disciplined. The Vanir were ancient, nurturing, and deeply connected to the earth. They were 2 halves of a greater whole. Broken apart, they weakened the balance of the 9 realms. Together, they could strengthen it. This understanding arrived, not suddenly, but gradually, like dawn coloring the rim of a winter horizon. The gods knew that the conflict had to end, and so they chose a path not of domination, but of reconciliation. A path shaped not by force, but by exchange, understanding, and quiet trust. The Aesir and the Vanir decided to create peace through mutual respect. To do this, they exchanged members of their families as living symbols of unity. From Asgard, the Aesir sent Hoenir and Mimir to Vanaheim. Hoenir was tall and noble, a god of leadership and steady presence. Mimir was wise beyond measure, with knowledge gathered from wells of deep magic. He carried clarity in his mind, understanding in his thoughts, and gentle patience in his voice. He was known for his counsel, for his ability to guide decisions with calm insight. In return, the Vanir sent 3 of their beloved, Freyja, and Njord. Njord was the god of the sea, of calm waters, and of gentle winds that carried boats home. Freyja was a god of sunlight, growth, harvest, and peace. Freyja was a goddess of beauty, magic, and deep emotion, one who understood the mysteries of spirit and heart. Together, these 3 brought warmth and harmony to Asgard. Their presence softened tensions, their gifts nourished the land, their wisdom balanced the energy of the Aesir. But not all exchanges unfolded smoothly. In Vanaheim, Hoenir was treated with respect. The Vanir believed he could be a great leader among them. However, they soon noticed that whenever Hoenir was asked for guidance, he hesitated unless Mimir was present. Without Mimir's whisper of wisdom, Hoenir struggled to give answers. He often responded by saying, "Let others decide." To the Vanir, this felt like betrayal. They believed the Aesir had sent them a leader who could not lead. Their trust wavered, their patience thinned. Eventually, frustration grew into quiet anger. They blamed Mimir for the deception. They believed he had played a role in misleading them. In their disappointment, they removed Mimir's head. But even in this sorrowful moment, the story did not turn violent again. Instead, the Vanir sent Mimir's head back to Odin, not out of cruelty, but out of solemn responsibility. Odin received Mimir's head with deep sadness. He understood the misunderstanding. He saw the pain and confusion beneath it. He did not respond with anger. Instead, he preserved the head with gentle magic, speaking ancient spells to keep Mimir's wisdom alive. He placed the head in a safe place, where it would continue to offer guidance. From that day forward, Mimir's voice remained calm and steady, whispering truth to Odin whenever the All-Father sought counsel. This moment, though somber, did not break the peace between the Aesir and the Vanir. Instead, it solidified their understanding of one another. Both sides recognized the fragility of trust. Both understood how easily misunderstandings can cloud intentions, and both realized how deeply they needed each other. The exchange of gods continued. Freyja brought warmth and prosperity to Asgard, teaching the Aesir to cherish the gentle rhythms of nature. Njord brought calm seas and soft winds, reminding Asgard of the beauty in peaceful journeys. Freyja brought magic older than words, introducing the Aesir to forms of power that flowed from emotion and intuition. Her presence softened hearts and awakened new wisdom in Asgard. In return, Hoenir remained in Vanaheim, offering his strength and noble presence. And though the loss of Mimir lingered, the Vanir came to understand that the Aesir had never intended deception. Their reconciliation grew stronger. Their connection deepened. Two families of gods slowly learned to work together, shaping a harmony that had never existed before. Over time, the long conflict faded into memory. Its echoes softened, drifting into stories told beneath starlight. The Aesir and the Vanir stood side by side, united not by force, but by shared purpose. Together, they would guide the realms through ages of calm, seasons of change, and moments of great destiny. In the quiet that followed, the 9 realms breathed more evenly. Yggdrasil hummed softly with renewed balance. Light traveled gently across the worlds. Seasons unfolded with steady grace. And the gods learned, once again, that even in moments of tension, understanding can bloom like a gentle flower through frost. This is the story of the Aesir and the Vanir, not a story of battle, but a story of distance slowly becoming closeness, a story of pain gradually turning into healing, a story of two families who learned that the cosmos is strongest when different strengths walk side by side. And as we close this chapter, let your breath settle again. Let your thoughts soften. For the next part of our journey will bring us into the lives of the gods themselves, into their quests, their challenges, and their quiet moments beneath the branches of Yggdrasil. Rest gently, my friend, for the story continues soon. Welcome back, my friend. Settle your breath, loosen your shoulders, and let the world around you soften. Tonight, we drift into a story whispered through time, a story of two groups of gods, two families shaped from the early fabric of creation, both strong, both wise, both holding roles in the balance of the cosmos. And yet, even in divine realms, harmony can tremble. Tonight, we explore the quiet echoes of a long conflict between the Aesir and the Vanir. A conflict not told with shouts or thunder, but with the slow, cold winds of the north, carrying memories of misunderstanding, transformation, and unity. The Aesir lived in Asgard, a realm of shimmering light and strong halls. They were gods of order, strength, wisdom, and protection. Their leader was Odin, the All-Father, whose single eye saw far into the folds of destiny. Beside him stood Thor, mighty and steadfast, and many others who shaped the fate of worlds. They valued courage, clarity, and the structure that held the 9 realms together. The Vanir lived in Vanaheim, a gentle and fertile land filled with warm breezes and blooming earth. They were gods of nature, abundance, peace, and ancient magic. They carried the rhythm of seasons in their veins. They guided growth, renewal, and prosperity. Their hearts were soft, and their wisdom deep, reaching into old memories of the earth itself. Though both families of gods cared for the balance of the 9 realms, their ways differed. Their views of magic, fate, and power did not always align, and like 2 rivers meeting in the same valley, tensions slowly grew. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, like frost forming on a window during a long winter night. The moment that stirred the conflict began with a woman named Gullveig. She wandered into Asgard one day, carrying with her a mysterious warmth. She spoke of magic older than the Aesir knew, magic of desire, prosperity, beauty, and the deep abundance of nature. Gullveig radiated charm and presence, and the gods of Asgard felt uneasy around her. Her words seemed too sweet, her power too subtle, her intentions too unclear. They feared she possessed secrets not meant for Asgard, and fear, even among gods, can cast long shadows. The Aesir grew suspicious of Gullveig. They questioned her loyalties and her strange form of magic. A magic that did not come from runes or battle skill, but from the heart of nature itself. Some say that Gullveig was a goddess of the Vanir, or at least deeply connected to them. Others say she simply carried the same energy that flowed through Vanaheim. But in the end, the Aesir decided they could not trust her. And so, in a moment of deep misunderstanding, they tried to destroy her. They cast her into flames. Her form burned brightly. And for a moment, the Aesir believed the danger had passed. Yet, when the flames faded, Gullveig stepped out unharmed, calm, unshaken, silent as moonlight on snow. The Aesir tried again. A second time, they cast her into fire. A second time, she returned, still serene, still whole. A third time, they attempted to end her. And a third time, she rose from the flames as if reborn. No anger touched her face, no fear, only a quiet certainty, as though she were part of a cycle greater than any attempt to break her. This moment, simple and silent as it was, created a deep wound. The Vanir heard what had happened in Asgard. They heard that one of their own, or at least one deeply connected to their nature, had been rejected and harmed. To them, Gullveig was a symbol of life's mysteries, of the gentle magic that nurtures the world. To see her mistreated in this way was painful. It was a sign that the Aesir did not understand or value the gifts of the Vanir. Misunderstanding grew, and misunderstandings, when left untended, become distance. That distance deepened into suspicion, and suspicion, slowly and softly, turned into a long conflict. Not a loud or chaotic one, but a steady, persistent struggle echoing across the realms like a cold wind brushing through empty fields. The Aesir and the Vanir faced each other with old magic and powerful strength. Both families of gods were resolute, both believed their ways were right. Their values collided like winter meeting spring. The tension that followed spread across the cosmos. It rolled gently through the 9 realms, stirring worry among giants, elves, and dwarves. Even mortals felt it faintly, as if the sky held its breath for too long. The conflict lasted a very long time, long enough that the memories of its beginning faded into the quiet hum of the world. But despite its length, this struggle was never a story of rage. It was a story of 2 perspectives clashing again and again, unable to find common ground. It was a dance of old wills, a slow drift of opposing energies, a reminder that even divine beings can disagree without truly understanding one another. As time passed, both sides realized something profound. Neither group could overcome the other. The Aesir were strong, wise, and disciplined. The Vanir were ancient, nurturing, and deeply connected to the earth. They were two halves of a greater whole. Broken apart, they weakened the balance of the 9 realms. Together, they could strengthen it. This understanding arrived, not suddenly, but gradually, like dawn coloring the rim of a winter horizon. The gods knew that the conflict had to end, and so they chose a path not of domination, but of reconciliation. A path shaped not by force, but by exchange, understanding, and quiet trust. The Aesir and the Vanir decided to create peace through mutual respect. To do this, they exchanged members of their families as living symbols of unity. From Asgard, the Aesir sent Hoenir and Mimir to Vanaheim. Hoenir was tall and noble, a god of leadership and steady presence. Mimir was wise beyond measure, with knowledge gathered from wells of deep magic. He carried clarity in his mind, understanding in his thoughts, and gentle patience in his voice. He was known for his counsel, for his ability to guide decisions with calm insight. In return, the Vanir sent 3 of their beloved, Freyja, and Njord. Njord was the god of the sea, of calm waters, and of gentle winds that carried boats home. Freyja was a god of sunlight, growth, harvest, and peace. Freyja was a goddess of beauty, magic, and deep emotion, one who understood the mysteries of spirit and heart. Together, these 3 brought warmth and harmony to Asgard. Their presence softened tensions, their gifts nourished the land, their wisdom balanced the energy of the Aesir. But not all exchanges unfolded smoothly. In Vanaheim, Hoenir was treated with respect. The Vanir believed he could be a great leader among them. However, they soon noticed that whenever Hoenir was asked for guidance, he hesitated unless Mimir was present. Without Mimir's whisper of wisdom, Hoenir struggled to give answers. He often responded by saying, "Let others decide." To the Vanir, this felt like betrayal. They believed the Aesir had sent them a leader who could not lead. Their trust wavered, their patience thinned. Eventually, frustration grew into quiet anger. They blamed Mimir for the deception. They believed he had played a role in misleading them. In their disappointment, they removed Mimir's head. But even in this sorrowful moment, the story did not turn violent again. Instead, the Vanir sent Mimir's head back to Odin, not out of cruelty, but out of solemn responsibility. Odin received Mimir's head with deep sadness. He understood the misunderstanding. He saw the pain and confusion beneath it. He did not respond with anger. Instead, he preserved the head with gentle magic, speaking ancient spells to keep Mimir's wisdom alive. He placed the head in a safe place, where it would continue to offer guidance. From that day forward, Mimir's voice remained calm and steady, whispering truth to Odin whenever the Allfather sought counsel. This moment, though somber, did not break the peace between the Aesir and the Vanir. Instead, it solidified their understanding of one another. Both sides recognized the fragility of trust. Both understood how easily misunderstandings can cloud intentions, and both realized how deeply they needed each other. The exchange of gods continued. Freyja brought warmth and prosperity to Asgard, teaching the Aesir to cherish the gentle rhythms of nature. Njord brought calm seas and soft winds, reminding Asgard of the beauty in peaceful journeys. Freyja brought magic older than words, introducing the Aesir to forms of power that flowed from emotion and intuition. Her presence softened hearts and awakened new wisdom in Asgard. In return, Hoenir remained in Vanaheim, offering his strength and noble presence. And though the loss of Mimir lingered, the Vanir came to understand that the Aesir had never intended deception. Their reconciliation grew stronger. Their connection deepened. 2 families of gods slowly learned to work together, shaping a harmony that had never existed before. Over time, the long conflict faded into memory. Its echoes softened, drifting into stories told beneath starlight. The Aesir and the Vanir stood side by side, united not by force, but by shared purpose. Together, they would guide the realms through ages of calm, seasons of change, and moments of great destiny. In the quiet that followed, the 9 realms breathed more evenly. Yggdrasil hummed softly with renewed balance. Light traveled gently across the worlds. Seasons unfolded with steady grace, and the gods learned, once again, that even in moments of tension, understanding can bloom like a gentle flower through frost. This is the story of the Aesir and the Vanir, not a story of battle, but a story of distance slowly becoming closeness, a story of pain gradually turning into healing, a story of 2 families who learned that the cosmos is strongest when different strengths walk side by side. And as we close this chapter, let your breath settle again. Let your thoughts soften. For the next part of our journey will bring us into the lives of the gods themselves, into their quests, their challenges, and their quiet moments beneath the branches of Yggdrasil. Rest gently, my friend, for the story continues soon. And so, my friend, as the quiet peace between the Aesir and the Vanir settled gently across the 9 realms, a new stillness began to take hold. The long northern conflict had become a memory carried on soft winds, like distant echoes fading into twilight. From this renewed harmony rose the presence of one who watched the realms closer than any other. Odin, the All-Father, the Wanderer, the seeker of truths hidden deeper than stone, older than time, softer than breath. With peace restored, Odin felt the weight of his purpose settle once more upon his shoulders. A purpose not of ruling alone, but of understanding, of seeing what others could not see, of knowing the threads that wove destiny together, and the shadows that tugged quietly against fate. For Odin believed that wisdom was not a luxury for the gods, it was their responsibility, and he felt this responsibility like a quiet ache in his solitary heart. From the moment Odin opened his single remaining eye each dawn, he carried a longing within him, a longing for knowledge that lay beyond sight, beyond reason, beyond comfort. The Aesir looked to him for guidance, the Vanir looked to him for balance, and the 9 realms looked to him for stability. But Odin knew that his understanding was incomplete. He sensed truths hidden beneath the surface of the world, truths he could almost touch, like whispers brushing against his mind. Yet they remained just out of reach. And so, after the reconciliation between the Aesir and the Vanir, Odin set his heart upon a journey not of conquest, but of learning, not of glory, but of quiet sacrifice. He sought the place where the deepest knowledge in existence flowed, the well of Mimir. Mimir's well lay far from the warm lights of Asgard, far from the gentle valleys of Vanaheim and the calm shores watched by Njord. It rested beneath the ancient roots of Yggdrasil, where time seemed slower and the air hummed with silent memory. The well was older than the gods, older than giants, older even than the first spark that rose from Muspelheim. Its waters held the essence of understanding itself. Whoever drank from it would open their mind to truths hidden in the folds of fate. But such wisdom required a price greater than any treasure, greater than any offering, greater than any promise. Odin knew this, and yet he walked toward the well with sure and steady steps. The journey took him across quiet fields, where the wind whispered gently through tall grass. He passed rivers that glowed softly beneath moonlight. He traveled through realms where the stars felt close enough to touch. Yet the deeper he went, the more the world around him grew still, as if even nature itself held its breath in anticipation. Finally, Odin reached the place where the great tree's roots twisted into the ground like ancient serpents of wood. Mimir's well rested in their shadows, its surface smooth and dark, reflecting nothing yet holding everything. Mimir emerged from the mist, carrying the quiet presence of one who had witnessed ages beyond ages. His eyes shone with knowledge that could not be spoken, only felt. And when Odin approached, Mimir regarded him with solemn calmness. You seek the waters, Mimir said softly. Not a question, but an understanding. Odin nodded, knowing that words were unnecessary. Mimir looked into Odin's face, studying the determination behind his gaze. He knew the depth of what Odin sought. He knew the paths that would open before the All-Father if he drank from the well. Paths filled with clarity and burden. Visions that could illuminate the world, or weigh upon him like shadows of eternity. At last, Mimir spoke the price. A sacrifice, he said gently. A part of yourself that cannot be reclaimed. And Odin understood. He did not argue. He did not hesitate. For wisdom, true wisdom, asks not for comfort, but for courage. Odin removed his spear and laid it beside him. He knelt before the well, feeling the cold breath rising from its depths, and with steady hands, he offered one of his eyes. The moment his eye touched the water, the well glowed faintly, as though awakening. Pain moved through him like a cold wind, sharp yet silent. But beneath the pain came a clarity so profound that it illuminated every corner of his mind. Visions poured into him, visions of past and future, of giants rising from stone, of gods walking through golden halls, of a serpent encircling the world, of a wolf with jaws wide enough to swallow the sky, of fire and frost meeting in a final embrace. And beyond all of it, a distant glimmer of rebirth. Odin saw everything, he felt everything. And in that moment, he became something greater than a ruler. He became a guardian of knowledge, a bearer of truth, a watcher of destiny. When the visions settled, Odin rose slowly, now seeing the world through one eye but with the clarity of more than two. His lost eye remained beneath the waters, glowing softly like a star submerged in darkness. Mimir bowed his head, acknowledging the depth of the sacrifice. And Odin, though hollowed by pain, felt a new fullness within his spirit. A steady, quiet understanding, a calmness that settled deep into his bones. With this new wisdom, he returned to Asgard not as he left it, but changed. Softer, yet stronger. Sadder, yet wiser. Carrying the weight of what would come and the determination to meet it. But the well was not the end of Odin's search. For he sensed that there was yet another layer of truth he had not touched. A mystery carved into the very fabric of reality. A power older even than the runes themselves, but one hidden among them. The runes, symbols of magic and meaning, were known only faintly to the gods. They were glimpses of deeper forces, patterns that hummed beneath existence. Odin felt drawn to them, drawn to the secrets they concealed. To unlock them, he knew he would need to make a second sacrifice. One not of sight, but of self. And so he journeyed again, this time to the upper branches of Yggdrasil. The great tree greeted him with a whispering wind, its leaves trembling like soft voices speaking in unison. Odin stepped onto one of its vast limbs, feeling the pulse of creation flowing through the bark beneath his feet. And there, in a quiet place suspended between sky and eternity, he readied himself. He took a spear and drove it through his own body, not with violence, but with a solemn acceptance. He tied himself to the branch with cords of ancient fiber. Then he let himself hang, suspended between life and death, between breath and silence, between being and unbeing. For 9 long nights, Odin hung from the tree. 9 nights without food, 9 nights without water, 9 nights in a space where wind, time, and thought seemed to blend into one. His blood dripped slowly into the depths below, feeding the roots of Yggdrasil. The tree, in turn, cradled him gently, as though recognizing his purpose. During the first night, Odin felt only pain, a steady, echoing ache that pulsed with each whisper of wind. But he did not cry out. He did not allow his spirit to waver. He simply watched the darkness unfold around him, letting his mind sink into the quiet world of shadow and breath. On the second night, the pain dulled into a distant throb. His thoughts drifted to the realms below, to the gods who depended on him, to the fragile lives of mortals in Midgard. He felt the weight of all existence resting on the same branch that held him suspended in silence. On the third night, he began to feel the flow of magic within Yggdrasil, a deep, humming vibration, like the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. This hum seeped into his wounds, into his bones, into the hidden chambers of his spirit. On the fourth night, he sensed something forming in the darkness. Shapes, symbols, soft glimmers of meaning that shifted just beyond his reach. On the fifth night, the symbols grew clearer, lines, angles, patterns etched into the air like whispers of light. On the sixth night, the pain returned not in his body, but in his mind. The runes were close, but grasping them felt like touching fire. Yet Odin held on, breathing through the ache, letting the images wash over him again and again. On the seventh night, he understood their rhythm, the way they turned, the way they connected, the way they spoke in silence. On the eighth night, meaning began to bloom gently within him, a meaning not in words, but in feeling. The runes were not just symbols, they were truths. They were the bones of magic, the veins of destiny, the breath of the world. On the ninth and final night, the runes revealed themselves fully. They shimmered before him like stars in a still sky. They carved themselves into his awareness with quiet brilliance. And Odin reached forward not with hands, but with spirit, and he took them. In that moment, he understood the essence of power. Not the power of might, not the power of fear, but the power of understanding, the power of woven meaning, the power of shaping destiny through knowledge rather than force. With the runes awakened within him, Odin fell from the tree's branch, not in defeat, but in revelation. Yggdrasil caught him, steady and gentle, lowering him back into the world like a parent guiding a child. He rose with new strength, new vision, new purpose, and from that day on, Odin became not just the ruler of the Aesir, but the keeper of runes, the master of wisdom, the wanderer who sought truth through sacrifice. He brought the runes to the gods. He taught magic to those willing to learn. He shaped the fate of the 9 realms in ways that even Mimir could not fully predict. And yet, with all the knowledge he carried, Odin remained humble before the vastness of existence, for he knew that wisdom was not an end, but a path, a quiet, endless path. And now, my friend, the story continues toward the quiet halls of Valhalla, where warriors sleep in golden peace. But this chapter still has more to tell. And so, my friend, as the quiet peace between the Aesir and the Vanir settled gently across the 9 realms, a new stillness began to take hold. The long northern conflict had become a memory carried on soft winds, like distant echoes fading into twilight. From this renewed harmony rose the presence of one who watched the realms closer than any other. Odin, the All-Father, the Wanderer, the seeker of truths hidden deeper than stone, older than time, softer than breath. With peace restored, Odin felt the weight of his purpose settle once more upon his shoulders. A purpose not of ruling alone, but of understanding, of seeing what others could not see, of knowing the threads that wove destiny together, and the shadows that tugged quietly against fate. For Odin believed that wisdom was not a luxury for the gods. It was their responsibility, and he felt this responsibility like a quiet ache in his solitary heart. From the moment Odin opened his single remaining eye each dawn, he carried a longing within him, a longing for knowledge that lay beyond sight, beyond reason, beyond comfort. The Aesir looked to him for guidance, the Vanir looked to him for balance, and the 9 realms looked to him for stability. But Odin knew that his understanding was incomplete. He sensed truths hidden beneath the surface of the world, truths he could almost touch, like whispers brushing against his mind. yet they remained just out of reach. And so, after the reconciliation between the Aesir and the Vanir, Odin set his heart upon a journey not of conquest, but of learning, not of glory, but of quiet sacrifice. He sought the place where the deepest knowledge in existence flowed, the well of Mimir. Mimir's well lay far from the warm lights of Asgard, far from the gentle valleys of Vanaheim and the calm shores watched by Njord. It rested beneath the ancient roots of Yggdrasil, where time seemed slower and the air hummed with silent memory. The well was older than the gods, older than giants, older even than the first spark that rose from Muspelheim. Its waters held the essence of understanding itself. Whoever drank from it would open their mind to truths hidden in the folds of fate. But such wisdom required a price greater than any treasure, greater than any offering, greater than any promise. Odin knew this, and yet he walked toward the well with sure and steady steps. The journey took him across quiet fields, where the wind whispered gently through tall grass. He passed rivers that glowed softly beneath moonlight. He traveled through realms where the stars felt close enough to touch. Yet the deeper he went, the more the world around him grew still, as if even nature itself held its breath in anticipation. Finally, Odin reached the place where the great tree's roots twisted into the ground like ancient serpents of wood. Mimir's well rested in their shadows, its surface smooth and dark, reflecting nothing yet holding everything. Mimir emerged from the mist, carrying the quiet presence of one who had witnessed ages beyond ages. His eyes shone with knowledge that could not be spoken, only felt. And when Odin approached, Mimir regarded him with solemn calmness. "You seek the waters," Mimir said softly. Not a question, but an understanding. Odin nodded, knowing that words were unnecessary. Mimir looked into Odin's face, studying the determination behind his gaze. He knew the depth of what Odin sought. He knew the paths that would open before the All-Father if he drank from the well. Paths filled with clarity and burden. Visions that could illuminate the world, or weigh upon him like shadows of eternity. At last, Mimir spoke the price. "A sacrifice," he said gently. "A part of yourself that cannot be reclaimed." And Odin understood. He did not argue. He did not hesitate. For wisdom, true wisdom, asks not for comfort, but for courage. Odin removed his spear and laid it beside him. He knelt before the well, feeling the cold breath rising from its depths, and with steady hands, he offered one of his eyes. The moment his eye touched the water, the well glowed faintly, as though awakening. Pain moved through him like a cold wind, sharp yet silent. But beneath the pain came a clarity so profound that it illuminated every corner of his mind. Visions poured into him, visions of past and future, of giants rising from stone, of gods walking through golden halls, of a serpent encircling the world, of a wolf with jaws wide enough to swallow the sky, of fire and frost meeting in a final embrace, and beyond all of it, a distant glimmer of rebirth. Odin saw everything, he felt everything, and in that moment, he became something greater than a ruler. He became a guardian of knowledge, a bearer of truth, a watcher of destiny. When the visions settled, Odin rose slowly, now seeing the world through one eye but with the clarity of more than two. His lost eye remained beneath the waters, glowing softly like a star submerged in darkness. Mimir bowed his head, acknowledging the depth of the sacrifice, and Odin, though hollowed by pain, felt a new fullness within his spirit. A steady, quiet understanding, a calmness that settled deep into his bones. With this new wisdom, he returned to Asgard not as he left it, but changed. Softer, yet stronger. Sadder, yet wiser. Carrying the weight of what would come and the determination to meet it. But the well was not the end of Odin's search. for he sensed that there was yet another layer of truth he had not touched, a mystery carved into the very fabric of reality, a power older even than the runes themselves, but one hidden among them. The runes, symbols of magic and meaning, were known only faintly to the gods. They were glimpses of deeper forces, patterns that hummed beneath existence. Odin felt drawn to them, drawn to the secrets they concealed. To unlock them, he knew he would need to make a second sacrifice, one not of sight, but of self. And so he journeyed again, this time to the upper branches of Yggdrasil. The great tree greeted him with a whispering wind, its leaves trembling like soft voices speaking in unison. Odin stepped onto one of its vast limbs, feeling the pulse of creation flowing through the bark beneath his feet. And there, in a quiet place suspended between sky and eternity, he readied himself. He took a spear and drove it through his own body, not with violence, but with a solemn acceptance. He tied himself to the branch with cords of ancient fiber. Then he let himself hang, suspended between life and death, between breath and silence, between being and unbeing. For 9 long nights, Odin hung from the tree, 9 nights without food, 9 nights without water, 9 nights in a space where wind, time, and thought seemed to blend into one. His blood dripped slowly into the depths below, feeding the roots of Yggdrasil. The tree, in turn, cradled him gently, as though recognizing his purpose. During the first night, Odin felt only pain, a steady, echoing ache that pulsed with each whisper of wind. But he did not cry out. He did not allow his spirit to waver. He simply watched the darkness unfold around him, letting his mind sink into the quiet world of shadow and breath. On the second night, the pain dulled into a distant throb. His thoughts drifted to the realms below, to the gods who depended on him, to the fragile lives of mortals in Midgard. He felt the weight of all existence resting on the same branch that held him suspended in silence. On the third night, he began to feel the flow of magic within Yggdrasil, a deep, humming vibration, like the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. This hum seeped into his wounds, into his bones, into the hidden chambers of his spirit. On the fourth night, he sensed something forming in the darkness, shapes, symbols, soft glimmers of meaning that shifted just beyond his reach. On the fifth night, the symbols grew clearer, lines, angles, patterns etched into the air like whispers of light. On the sixth night, the pain returned not in his body, but in his mind. The runes were close, but grasping them felt like touching fire. Yet Odin held on, breathing through the ache, letting the images wash over him again and again. On the seventh night, he understood their rhythm, the way they turned, the way they connected, the way they spoke in silence. On the eighth night, meaning began to bloom gently within him, a meaning not in words, but in feeling. The runes were not just symbols, they were truths. They were the bones of magic, the veins of destiny, the breath of the world. On the ninth and final night, the runes revealed themselves fully. They shimmered before him like stars in a still sky. They carved themselves into his awareness with quiet brilliance. And Odin reached forward not with hands, but with spirit, and he took them. In that moment, he understood the essence of power. Not the power of might, not the power of fear, but the power of understanding, the power of woven meaning, the power of shaping destiny through knowledge rather than force. With the runes awakened within him, Odin fell from the tree's branch, not in defeat, but in revelation. Yggdrasil caught him, steady and gentle, lowering him back into the world like a parent guiding a child. He rose with new strength, new vision, new purpose, and from that day on, Odin became not just the ruler of the Aesir, but the keeper of runes, the master of wisdom, the wanderer who sought truth through sacrifice. He brought the runes to the gods. He taught magic to those willing to learn. He shaped the fate of the 9 realms in ways that even Mimir could not fully predict. And yet, with all the knowledge he carried, Odin remained humble before the vastness of existence, for he knew that wisdom was not an end, but a path, a quiet, endless path. And now, my friend, the story continues toward the quiet halls of Valhalla, where warriors sleep in golden peace. But this chapter still has more to tell. As Odin stepped down from the branches of Yggdrasil, the air around him carried a new stillness, a soft, ancient calm that seemed to follow him like a shadow of understanding. The runes had settled into his spirit, glowing quietly beneath his thoughts. They hummed like distant stars, guiding him gently toward the future. The 9 realms felt different to him now, more connected, more delicate, more full of patterns that only he could see. Every whisper of wind, every shifting leaf, every ripple of water felt like a message written in the language of the runes, a language he had sacrificed his own life to understand. But even with this profound knowledge, Odin knew there was still another responsibility waiting for him. A responsibility tied to the fate of gods and men alike. For Odin had glimpsed what awaited the cosmos. He had seen the distant shadows of a final battle, a twilight where fires would rise, where wolves would break free, where gods would meet their destinies beneath a burning sky. And he knew that the worlds needed a place of preparation, a place where courage could be nurtured, where spirits strong enough to face the end of days could gather and grow. And so Odin turned his gaze toward a realm he had long imagined but had not yet shaped. A realm of honor, of rest, of quiet strength. A hall where the bravest warriors would sleep peacefully, waiting for the day when their courage would be called upon again. This place would become Valhalla. Odin returned to Asgard with renewed clarity, and the gods sensed the change in him instantly. Thor felt it in the steady rhythm of his father's footsteps. Frigg felt it in the soft weight of his gaze. The Vanir felt it in the air, which now carried a deeper, wiser hum. Even the golden walls of Asgard seemed to glow with a gentler light upon Odin's arrival. He walked to the plains beyond the great gates of the city. Grass swayed around him like a quiet sea. The sky stretched wide overhead, painted with slow-moving clouds. Here, Odin would build the hall that would stand as a beacon of strength and serenity. With the power of the runes, he shaped the foundations of Valhalla. Its walls rose like golden dawn. Its doors shimmered with soft, warm radiance. Its roof shone like a field of shields, polished by starlight. Inside, long tables stretched into shadowed distance, carved from ancient wood that whispered with the memory of living forests. Fires glowed gently in vast hearths, giving off heat that warmed without burning. Every corner of the hall breathed peace. Every echo carried tranquility. But despite its splendor, Valhalla was not meant to be a place of endless feasting or endless battle. Not in Odin's eyes. Not in the true heart of his vision. To him, Valhalla was a place of rest, a sanctuary, a dream balanced on the edge of destiny. He summoned the Valkyries' spirits of quiet grace and unwavering purpose. They moved like silver shadows across the sky. Their eyes shone with calm determination. Their wings rustled like soft night winds. Odin entrusted them with one of the most delicate tasks in the cosmos: to choose, from all the worlds, those whose spirits would shine brightest in the stillness before the end. Not merely the strongest, not merely the fiercest, but those whose courage came from the heart, those who held kindness amid hardship, those who walked through fear with steady steps, those who lived with honor, even in the chaos of Midgard. The Valkyries glided through battlefields of men, their presence unnoticed by mortal eyes. When they chose a warrior, they did so with gentleness, a soft touch of light, a quiet lifting of the soul, and the warrior would awaken beneath the golden roof of Valhalla, breathing calmly, free from pain, free from fear. In Valhalla, these warriors did not fight endlessly for Odin's amusement. They trained when they wished. They feasted when they wished. They rested beneath the golden rafters, listening to tales of old heroes spoken in soft voices. Their spirits grew not only strong, but peaceful. For Odin knew that courage born from peace would endure far longer than courage born from rage. Day by day, Valhalla, filled with gentle strength, the sound of laughter drifted through its vast halls like soft music. Stories of old battles mingled with dreams of future dawns. The warriors grew close, forming bonds deeper than blood. They became a family shaped not by force, but by respect. Each night, the fires crackled warmly. Each morning, the golden doors opened to sunlight that felt like a blessing. And Odin walked among them often, not as a distant ruler, but as a quiet guide. He listened to their stories. He comforted their fears. He shared what wisdom he could, always careful not to burden them with the heavy truths he carried in his own heart. For Odin alone bore the knowledge of what awaited at the end of all things. He had seen Ragnarök in the waters of Mimir's well. He had felt it in the runes that carved themselves into his soul. He had heard it in the quiet creaking of Yggdrasil during his 9 nights suspended between worlds. But he did not fear it. He simply accepted it, the way one accepts the turning of seasons, the way one accepts night following day, the way one accepts that even stars must one day fade. Yet still, he prepared, patiently, quietly, with love for all the beings who walked the realms in innocence, with respect for all the forces that shaped the tapestry of existence, with hope, yes, even hope that some light might remain after the shadows. After creating Valhalla, Odin continued to travel. He roamed the branches of Yggdrasil in his cloak of twilight grey. He wandered through Jotunheim, speaking to giants whose wisdom matched mountains in age. He walked the shores of Midgard, watching humans grow, build, hope, and dream. He visited Alfheim, observing the light elves as they danced beneath glowing skies. He passed through Svartalfheim, where dwarves hammered sparks into brilliance, and he drifted through the quiet mists of Helheim, honoring the souls who rested in silence. Each journey softened Odin further. Each encounter deepened his understanding of existence. He saw that every realm, every creature, every moment held meaning. He saw that the threads of life wove together gently, forming a tapestry too intricate for any single mind to comprehend, even his own. One evening, he returned to the shores of Asgard, where the sky was painted with colors of fading sunset. He sat beneath the branches of a quiet tree. The grass swayed around him with the soft rhythm of breath, and for a long time, he simply listened. Listened to the wind. Listened to the distant murmurs of the realms. Listened to the steady beating of existence. And in that quiet moment, Odin felt both the weight of eternity and the comfort of it. He knew that his sacrifices were not in vain. He knew that wisdom, though heavy, could guide the worlds toward balance. He knew that his place was not to rule with iron will, but to watch, to learn, and to prepare, to guide when necessary, to step back when appropriate, to carry knowledge not as a burden, but as a lantern in the dark. The gods of Asgard often gathered around Odin during these reflective moments. Thor would sit nearby, his powerful hands resting calmly on his knees. Frigg would stand at Odin's side, her gaze warm and full of quiet knowing. The Vanir Freyja, and Njord would bring with them the sense of fertile earth and gentle winds, and together they formed a circle of peace beneath the sky of Asgard. Odin rarely spoke during these gatherings. He preferred silence. Silence allowed him to hear the runes whispering within him. Silence allowed him to sense the slow turning of fate. Silence allowed him to share his calm with the gods who looked to him for steadiness. When he did speak, his words were soft, measured, thoughtful. They carried the weight of ages, yet felt gentle enough to lull even the most restless heart. His wisdom drifted through the air like falling snow, cooling the worries of those around him. In the days that followed, Odin dedicated himself to teaching the gods the meanings of runes, not the full depth, for some truths were too heavy even for divine hearts, but enough for them to glimpse the beauty hidden in the fabric of existence. He showed them symbols carved with purpose, lines that held secrets of protection, symbols that offered clarity, healing, and insight. And as they learned, the gods grew stronger, not in might, but in understanding. Odin also shared his wisdom with the Valkyries, who carried his teachings into the far reaches of Midgard. Through them, humans felt faint echoes of runic magic in dreams and visions. A farmer might feel sudden courage while facing a harsh winter. A mother might find unexpected strength during a difficult moment. A warrior might feel steady despite fear. These subtle blessings came from Odin's quiet touch, carried through the hands of his winged maidens. But the greatest of Odin's teachings was not spoken aloud. It lived within Valhalla, within the quiet breathing of sleeping warriors, within the soft glow of fires burning through eternal night, within the peaceful rhythm of a hall built not for endless combat, but for endless preparation. For Odin knew that every soul resting there would one day rise with him, not in rage, not in fury, but in acceptance, bravery, and calm strength. Valhalla became the heart of Odin's legacy, not because it promised glory, but because it promised readiness, peaceful readiness, steady readiness, the kind that grows in silence, like seeds beneath winter snow, waiting patiently for the moment they must rise. And so, Odin continued to watch over his hall, his gods, and the 9 realms. He stood as a father not because he demanded it, but because he carried within him the wisdom, softness, and quiet determination that held the worlds together. He was the All-Father, the Wanderer, the Seeker, the Watcher of Fate, the Friend of Runes, the Keeper of Valhalla's sleeping courage, and the first to sacrifice so that others might understand. As this chapter closes, imagine Odin standing beneath the starlit sky of Asgard, his single eye glowing softly with knowledge beyond words. Yggdrasil towering behind him like the spine of the cosmos. Valhalla shimmering in the distance like a dream of gold. Feel the calm he carries. Feel the quiet strength in his silence. Feel the slow turning of fate beneath his steady gaze. And let yourself rest in that stillness a little longer. For the next chapter will carry us into the wandering stories of the gods, their journeys, their lessons, and the gently unfolding path toward destinies yet unseen. The quiet wisdom of Odin drifted across Asgard like a soft morning mist. His calm presence settled into the hearts of gods and warriors alike. And as the stillness of the All-Father spread through the Golden Realm, another presence stirred, one filled not with silence, but with warm strength, a presence as steady as mountains, as sincere as sunlight, and as comforting as the sound of distant thunder. This was Thor, son of Odin, protector of Asgard, and beloved guardian of Midgard. Thor was not like his father. Where Odin sought knowledge, Thor sought clarity. Where Odin carried secrets, Thor carried honesty. Where Odin looked into the ancient depths of fate, Thor looked into the faces of those he loved. He was powerful, yes, stronger than any being who walked the 9 realms. His footsteps shook the earth. His hands could crush stone. His voice could roll across the sky like gentle thunder. Yet, for all this might, Thor's heart was remarkably soft. He cared deeply for his family, for his people, and for the fragile humans of Midgard. He loved simple joys, food shared with friends, laughter in great halls, long walks beneath wide skies. He was quick to trust, quick to forgive, and quick to offer help to anyone who needed it. He was not subtle, nor cunning, nor mysterious. but he was sincere in all that he did. His simplicity was not foolishness, but purity of spirit. He acted without malice, without deceit, without hesitation. And because of that, many found comfort in his presence. Thor's wife, Sif, understood this more than anyone. She carried a grace that balanced Thor's thunderous energy. Her long golden hair flowed like sunlight down her back, shimmering with warmth and vitality. Her presence brought peace to Thor's restless heart. Together, they created a harmony as gentle as summer rain. But peace, even in Asgard, could be fragile. For mischief has a habit of stirring where joy grows brightest. And mischief, in those days, wore the shape of Loki. Loki, the clever god of trickery, often moved through Asgard like a quiet breeze. Unpredictable, subtle, and always carrying a hint of trouble. He admired Thor in his own strange way, but he also found endless amusement in disturbing Thor's peaceful life, not with malice, but with a restless curiosity that sometimes slipped into thoughtlessness. One quiet night, when the moon hung softly above Asgard, Loki wandered through the halls of the gods. He came upon Sif, sleeping gently, her golden hair spread around her like a pool of light. And in that moment, for reasons even he could not fully explain, Loki felt a mischievous impulse rise within him. He lifted a blade sharp, delicate, almost weightless, and with a soft whisper of metal, he cut away her entire golden hair. When dawn came, Thor awoke to Sif's shocked cry. He found her trembling, her hair gone, her beauty dimmed, not by vanity but by the deep sense of loss the golden strands had symbolized. Thor's heart ached, not with anger at first, but with sorrow. Sif was more than her hair, but she treasured it the way a tree treasures sunlight, the way the ocean treasures its quiet waves. Thor gathered her gently in his arms. He whispered comfort. He promised to restore what had been taken. And then, with steps heavy as storm clouds, he went to find Loki. When Thor found him, Loki tried to laugh it off, claiming it was a harmless joke. But Thor's eyes, usually full of warmth, held a grief too deep for laughter. He did not roar. He did not strike. He simply spoke with quiet firmness. "You will fix this." And for once, Loki realized he had gone too far. He bowed his head. He agreed to make amends, not with excuses, but with action. Loki traveled to Svartalfheim, home of the dwarves. There, beneath the roots of mountains, in halls lit by fiery forges, the dwarves worked with skill unmatched by any being in the cosmos. They shaped metal not only with hammers, but with ancient magic. They forged wonders that shimmered with life. Loki sought out the sons of Ivaldi, master craftsmen known for their steady hands and sharp minds. He asked them for a gift worthy of Sif, something that would not merely replace her lost hair, but honor her beauty with something eternal. The dwarves listened in silence. Then they crafted. Their hammers rang like soft bells through the stone halls. Sparks danced like fireflies, and when they were done, they presented Loki with something extraordinary: golden hair spun from living magic. Strands that would grow like real hair, shine brighter than sunlight, and cling to Sif's head as naturally as the locks she had lost. But Loki, ever restless, wanted more. Unable to resist stirring chaos, he provoked another pair of dwarves, Brock and Sindri, into crafting even greater treasures. This time, Loki challenged them, wagering his own head that they could not surpass the sons of Ivaldi. Quietly amused, the brothers accepted. From their forge came 3 wonders: the golden boar Gullinbursti, the spear Gungnir, and the ring Draupnir. But the greatest treasure they forged was a hammer shaped from the heart of a dying star, a hammer heavy with power, yet light in the hand of one worthy, a hammer that would become Thor's companion for all ages. Mjolnir. Loki returned to Asgard with the gifts, trying to hide his nervousness. The gods gathered, their eyes filled with curiosity. Sif received her new golden hair, shimmering like warm dawn as it took root upon her head. Thor's heart lifted at the sight. Her beauty returned, but more than that, her confidence blossomed again like sunlight after a storm. Then Mjolnir was presented to Thor. Its handle was short, an imperfection caused by Loki's interference during the forging, but the hammer itself was unmatched in power. It hummed with silent strength, as if aware that its destiny lay in the hands of the god who stood before it. Thor lifted Mjolnir with ease. A warm, familiar energy flowed through him. It felt less like a weapon and more like an extension of his spirit, a partner, a promise, a thunderbolt forged into form. Holding the hammer close, Thor felt gratitude, forgiveness, and renewed purpose. Loki, relieved to still have his head, offered a tentative smile. Thor returned it with a calm nod. The moment softened the tension between them, even if it did not erase Loki's unpredictable nature. With Mjolnir at his side, Thor's role as protector deepened. He felt more connected to the Nine Realms, more aware of the fragile balance between chaos and peace. He knew that strength must be used with care, and he carried that knowledge with him like a steady heartbeat. Yet for all his readiness, Thor remained curious. He wanted to understand the world beyond Asgard. He wanted to see the land spoken of only in whispers. He wanted to test himself not out of arrogance, but out of a desire to grow. This longing would soon lead him to one of his most unusual journeys, a journey to the Hall of the Giants, ruled by the enigmatic figure known as Utgard Loki. The tale begins quietly. Thor, accompanied by Loki and two human companions, set out across Midgard. They walked through forests where trees stretched high into mist. They crossed rivers glowing with moonlight. They slept beneath wide skies, listening to the soft whisper of distant stars. Thor carried Mjolnir at his side, but he walked gently, careful not to frighten the people or creatures they met. He laughed easily, shared food openly, and treated even the simplest stranger with kindness. Loki, meanwhile, moved like a flicker of light, sometimes helpful, sometimes troublesome, always unpredictable. Their human companions watched the gods with awe. They saw Thor not as a distant figure of myth, but as a warm presence, patient and surprisingly humble. One evening, they reached a forest so dim that the air felt thick with shadow. The wind rustled through the trees like quiet laughter. They found a small building and stepped inside for shelter, not realizing that it was actually the glove of a sleeping giant. When the giant stirred, the ground trembled beneath their feet, but instead of attacking, he greeted them calmly. He introduced himself as Skrymir and offered to guide them through Jotunheim. Thor, wary but polite, accepted. Skrymir walked ahead with strides so long and slow that the gods struggled to keep pace. During the night, when the giants slept, Thor tried to open his food pouch, but the knots were impossibly tight, another subtle test of strength and patience. Frustrated but still calm, Thor struck Skrymir with Mjolnir 3 times. Each blow could have shattered mountains. Yet the giant only murmured softly in his sleep, thinking a leaf or acorn had brushed against him. The message was clear. Strength alone would not be enough in the realm they were entering. Soon, they reached the great hall of Utgard Loki. The giant king welcomed them with quiet amusement, studying Thor with knowing eyes. He declared that no one could remain in his hall unless they proved themselves through simple tests. Tests that seemed harmless, almost playful, yet carried deep meaning beneath their surface. Loki was the first to be tested. He challenged a giant to an eating contest, confident in his ability to consume food quickly. Yet the giant devoured not only the meat, but the plates, the bones, and even the table itself. Thor watched quietly, sensing that something unseen lay behind these trials. Soon, it was his turn. He was asked to drink from a great horn. Thor lifted it, expecting ale. but the liquid tasted like the ocean. He drank deeply again and again, yet the level barely lowered. Then he was asked to lift a simple cat, just a house cat, small and harmless. Thor reached down, placing his hands beneath its belly. He lifted, but the cat's body stretched unnaturally long, and only one paw left the ground. Finally, he faced an old woman, small, bent, frail. He was told to wrestle her. Thor hesitated. He did not want to harm someone so fragile, but she stepped forward, her eyes filled with strange strength. They grappled. Thor pushed, pulled, strained, and struggled, but she held firm. Slowly, gently, she bent him to his knees. The hall fell silent. Thor had failed every trial, but instead of mocking him, Utgard Loki spoke with calm clarity. "You were deceived," he explained softly. "Each test was an illusion, a symbol. You drank from a horn connected to the sea. You lifted a cat that was no cat at all, but the great serpent that encircles the world. And the old woman you faced was old age herself. No one can lift the sea. No one can move the world's serpent. No one can defeat age." Thor listened in quiet awe, not ashamed, not angry, simply thoughtful. He understood the meaning deeply. Strength has limits. Even gods face boundaries, and wisdom can be found in recognizing what cannot be overcome. Utgard Loki bowed to Thor, not mockingly, but with genuine respect. "For a god to perform as you did," he said, "even against these illusions, is remarkable." Thor returned the bow, humbled. And for the first time, he felt a new kind of strength, the strength of understanding, the strength of patience, the strength of quiet acceptance. But Thor's lessons were not over, for soon he would face a creature not born of illusion, a creature whose body curved through the deepest oceans of Midgard, a creature whose breath carried storms, a creature whose existence whispered prophecy, Jormungandr, the world's serpent. And that journey begins in the stillness of a dark ocean. Thor and his companions left the hall of Utgard Loki with thoughtful silence resting on their shoulders. The lessons of illusion and humility lingered in Thor's mind like soft echoes. He did not feel defeated. He did not feel ashamed. Instead, he felt awakened. He had glimpsed the boundaries of strength, the subtle artistry of trickery, and the quiet truth that even gods must bow to forces greater than themselves. The wind of Jotunheim brushed against his cheeks with a cold gentleness, as though acknowledging his growth. Mjolnir hung at his side, warm with steady energy, sensing the shift in Thor's spirit. Their path back toward Asgard wound through forests of towering pines and long, open valleys brushed with frost. Loki walked beside Thor, unusually calm. Perhaps even he sensed that their adventures had left an imprint on the thunder god's heart. The two mortal companions followed closely, still awed by the trials they had witnessed. As they traveled, Thor's mind drifted back to the illusion of the cat that was not a cat, the cat whose body was impossibly long, the cat that no strength of his could fully lift from the ground. Utgard Loki had revealed the truth. It was Jormungandr, the serpent that encircled the world, the very same serpent whose destiny was intertwined with Thor himself. Thor felt a stirring inside him, a gentle yet persistent sense of unfinished purpose. He had faced an echo of the serpent, an illusion shaped from its essence, but he had never stood before the creature itself, never witnessed the curve of its massive body beneath dark waters, never felt the weight of its presence against the horizon, and part of him wondered if he was meant to. The opportunity arrived sooner than he expected. After returning to Asgard, Thor visited many realms, walking with humans in Midgard, listening to the dwarves' hammers in Svartalfheim, watching the elves tend their glowing fields in Alfheim, but his heart remained restless, a quiet storm turning behind calm eyes. And one day, He decided to travel to the land of a giant named Hymir, known not for chaos or malice, but for his great cauldron and his skill at fishing. Thor traveled with Tyr, the god of justice and quiet courage. They journeyed across wide plains and through ancient stone valleys, until Hymir's hall rose before them, its stone walls weathered, its roof shaped like the curved back of a mountain. The giant greeted them with mild surprise, but welcomed them in with reserved hospitality. His hall was vast, lit by glowing embers in a massive hearth, the air warm with the scents of roasted meat and mountain air. They shared a meal together. After Thor finished an entire ox, much to Hymir's astonishment, the giant mentioned that he would need to fish the next day to gather more food. Thor's heart stirred at the word fish. He asked softly, "May I come with you?" Hymir studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well," he said. "But we will go far, beyond the whales, beyond the shoals, into the deep waters where the world curves into silence." Thor felt a quiet thrill rise within him. He knew what dwelled in the deep. He did not say it aloud. He did not boast. He simply prepared. The next morning, Thor and Hymir pushed a long wooden boat into the cold waves. The air smelled of salt and northern wind. The sky stretched gray and endless. Thor rowed with steady, powerful strokes, guiding them far from shore, past the rocky coast, past the singing seabirds, past even the whales that surfaced like gentle mountains of flesh. Hymir grew uneasy as they drifted into darker waters. "These depths are not for gods," he warned. "There are things below that even giants do not disturb." But Thor only looked at the horizon, his expression soft and steady. Hymir baited his hook with simple fish. Then he told Thor to do the same. Thor, however, reached into the boat, lifted a massive ox head he had taken earlier, and placed it quietly onto his hook. Hymir gasped. "That bait is not for ordinary creatures," he whispered. Thor said nothing. Together, they cast their lines. The boat drifted. Wind brushed the surface of the water. The waves rocked them gently. The world fell into deep, ancient stillness. Then the sea began to move, not with the rhythm of wind, but with something living, something vast, something waking in the deep. Thor felt it before Hymir did, a pull like the slow shifting of a mountain, a tension like the breath of a sleeping titan. He braced himself. The line trembled, the boat groaned, the depths vibrated with a sound too low for mortal ears. Then the ocean erupted. A colossal head rose from the water, scaled, glistening, crowned with shadow. Eyes like cold green storms stared at Thor from beneath dripping waves. The curve of Jormungandr's body stretched far beyond sight, looping beneath the sea in endless length. Its breath stirred the wind, its presence dimmed the sky. Hymir froze in terror, but Thor felt calm. Not fearless, but steady, as though this moment was an ancient truth finally stepping into light. The serpent thrashed, sending waves crashing in all directions. The boat rocked violently, but Thor tightened his grip on the fishing line. His muscles surged, his breath deepened. He braced his feet against the wooden planks. He pulled, slowly, steadily. He hauled the serpent upward. Thunder whispered in the distance. Clouds gathered overhead. The air crackled with quiet electricity. Mjolnir hummed at Thor's side, sensing destiny's pull. The giant watched, trembling. He had never seen such strength, such resolve, such silent courage. And Thor, his eyes shone not with rage, but with profound focus, with acceptance, with a kind of understanding that only arises when one meets a destiny long foretold. Jormungandr rose higher, its enormous body coiling around the horizon. Waves crashed against the boat. Thor reached for Mjolnir. The moment stretched, suspended between breath and storm. But Hymir panicked. He feared that the serpent's awakening would doom the world. In a desperate burst of terror, he slashed the fishing line. The cord snapped. Jörmungandr plunged back into the deep, vanishing beneath the waves with a roar that echoed across the cosmos. The sea stilled. The boat rocked softly. The sky cleared. Thor stood motionless. Not angry. Not frustrated. Simply quiet. He knew the serpent lived. He knew they would meet again. Not in calm waters, but in the fires of a distant twilight. Hymir breathed shakily, relieved. "Be thankful," he murmured. "You do not understand the doom you nearly brought." Thor looked at him gently. "I understand more than you know." They rowed back toward shore, the waves whispering against the hull. Thor gazed at the sea with deep reflection. He felt no regret. He felt no fear, only a quiet certainty that some destinies wait beneath the surface, like great serpents curled in sleep, awakening only when the world is ready. When Thor and Tyr returned to Asgard, the sky seemed brighter, the winds softer. The halls of the gods welcomed them with warm torchlight and peaceful music. Thor shared no details of the encounter unless asked. He spoke of it simply, calmly, without embellishment. For Thor did not seek glory, he sought understanding, and the sea had given him much to ponder. That night, Thor sat on a balcony overlooking the quiet fields of Asgard. Mjolnir rested beside him. Sif sat close, her golden hair glowing under starlight. Thor leaned his head gently against hers. She asked nothing. She simply sat with him, and in that silence, Thor's heart felt full. He had faced illusions in the Hall of Giants. He had faced destiny in the depths of the sea. And he had faced himself, his limits, his hopes, and the quiet truth that power alone is not purpose. His journeys shaped him, softened him, deepened him, not into a god of thunder alone, but into a god of compassion, humility, and patient strength. Thor closed his eyes. The stars shimmered. The 9 realms breathed gently beneath him. And somewhere, far in the dark ocean, a serpent shifted in its sleep, waiting for the day when their paths would cross again. But that day was far away, and for now, Asgard was quiet. The world was peaceful. And Thor, protector, wanderer, gentle giant of the gods, rested in the calm he had helped preserve. The story of Thor does not end here, but tonight, let this part settle softly in your heart, for the next chapter awaits with new journeys, new lessons, and new whispers carried on northern winds. In the quiet hours after Thor returned from his journeys, Asgard settled once more into gentle peace. The halls glowed with warm torchlight, and the wind that brushed over the rainbow bridge carried a calm, contented hum. Yet beneath that calm, another presence stirred, a presence neither wholly light nor wholly shadow, a presence woven of clever laughter, restless thoughts, and mysteries that even Odin could not fully unravel. This presence was Loki. Loki had walked beside the Aesir for longer than most remembered. To some, he was a companion. To others, a trickster. To Odin, he was something in between. A brother not by blood, but by oath. A fellow wanderer. A soul shaped by sharp wit and deeper loneliness. In the early days, Loki was not feared. He was admired. He was quick with his hands, quicker with his mind, and quickest of all with his tongue. His words moved like silver threads, smooth, bright, irresistible. He could talk his way into halls guarded by giants. He could slip through locked doors as though the world opened for him out of curiosity. He moved lightly, gracefully, always just beyond expectation. His cleverness was not always gentle, but there was a charm to it, a playfulness. Even the gods who scolded him could rarely stay angry for long. Thor laughed at him more often than he scolded him. Freyja tolerated him with amused sighs, Frigg saw in him a spark of something wounded, something yearning. And Odin kept him close, for the All-Father saw what others did not. He saw the storm beneath Loki's smile. He saw the longing behind his jokes. He saw the destiny entangled around him like invisible chains. Yet Odin still chose him not out of pity, but out of faith. From the beginning, Loki walked between worlds. He was not a god by birth. He was a giant's son. The blood of ancient Jotunheim flowed through his veins. But he carried none of their heavy presence or harsh temperament. He was agile as wind, shifting shape with ease, now a salmon leaping from water, now a bird gliding through the sky, now a fox slipping through snow. And when he laughed, the sound danced through the air like sunlight flickering on water. Asgard became brighter with Loki in it. But light cannot exist without casting shadows, and Loki's shadows grew slowly, gently, quietly, almost unnoticed. In the beginning, his mischief was harmless. Small pranks that caused laughter more often than irritation. A switched goblet here, a misplaced cloak there. A story exaggerated until the gods roared with amusement. Odin would shake his head with a half-smile. Thor would grumble and then laugh. Sif would sigh but forgive. Everything seemed simple then. But mischief is a seed. When fed too often, it grows. And Loki's mind, restless and brilliant, rarely found satisfaction for long. He began to seek bigger tricks, more daring games, challenges that stretched past the boundaries of play. Some of these brought great gifts to the gods, Mjolnir, Gungnir, Draupnir, and Sif's golden hair came into the world through Loki's meddling and manipulation. These gifts strengthened Asgard and earned Loki reluctant gratitude. But even in triumph, Loki felt something hollow within him, as though no praise could reach the deeper chambers of his heart, as though something inside him waited, watched, whispered. Odin sensed these whispers. Sometimes, he would call Loki to sit beside him beneath the branches of Yggdrasil. They would speak softly, not as king and subject, nor as teacher and student, but as two wanderers shaped by longing for the unknown. In those moments, Loki was calm, almost peaceful, almost whole. Odin cherished these moments, though he knew they would not last forever. For destiny, once set in motion, does not easily slow. Despite the growing shadows, Odin still called Loki brother. He trusted him with delicate tasks. He shared stories of ancient journeys. He allowed Loki to walk freely between Asgard, Midgard, and Jotunheim. And Loki felt seen in a way he rarely allowed himself to feel, protected, accepted, wanted. Perhaps that is why the next part of his story feels so heavy, so inevitable, so painfully human. For no heart stays untouched forever, and even gods know sorrow. In the far reaches of Jotunheim lived a giantess named Angrboda. She was unlike most giants, quiet, wise, carrying strength not of body but of spirit. Her presence was like an ancient forest, deep, shadowed, unknowable, yet strangely comforting. Loki met her during one of his wanderings. The moment their eyes met, something shifted inside him, something deep and old, a longing he had never named. With Angrboda, Loki did not need to pretend. He did not need to act clever or amusing. He did not need to hide the heaviness that sometimes clouded his thoughts. She saw him fully, the light, the shadow, the brilliance, the pain, and she did not flinch. Their bond grew quietly. A secret place in Loki's heart, a refuge. And from this union came 3 children, children who would carry destinies far heavier than their father had wished for them. The first was a serpent, tiny at first, coiled silently in Angrboda's hands. Its scales shimmered with an otherworldly sheen. Its eyes glowed like moonlight on dark water. They named it Jormungandr, but the serpent grew, and grew, and grew, until its body stretched across valleys, around mountains, through oceans. It grew until only the sea could cradle its vastness. And Odin, seeing its future, cast it into the deep waters of Midgard. The second child was a wolf, a fragile cub at first, no larger than a mortal hound, but within its small body pulsed a strength that belonged not to the present, but to destiny itself. The gods watched it cautiously, for they sensed something immense sleeping behind those bright young eyes. Tyr alone approached the wolf. Tyr alone fed it. Tyr alone stroked its fur with gentle hands. And the wolf, sensing truth, grew to love him. They named him Fenrir. The third child was a girl, half her face beautiful as morning light, half her face shadowed and cold, like the stillness of a winter grave. She said little, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of ages. She felt drawn to the realm of the dead, to silence, to memory, to the quiet dignity of endings. Odin gave her a place to rule, Helheim. They called her Hel. Loki loved them all, in his own complicated way, in the way that broken hearts sometimes learn to love fiercely, silently, imperfectly. But the Aesir grew uneasy. The children carried power that trembled through the roots of Yggdrasil. Fate curled around them like cold mist. Odin saw what they might become. He did not hate them, he did not fear them, but he understood the weight of prophecy, and the prophecy whispered of endings. And so he made a decision, one that would fracture Loki's heart more deeply than any blade. A decision not born of cruelty, but of duty. A decision soaked in quiet sorrow. Hel was given the realm of the dead, not as exile, but as purpose. Jormungandr was placed into the ocean, where he would grow until he circled the world. Fenrir was brought to Asgard. The gods watched him grow with awe and unease. Every day, the wolf became larger, stronger, more aware, more powerful, and yet, his heart remained gentle toward Tyr. He trusted Tyr. He trusted only Tyr. But trust alone could not stop destiny. And Odin knew that Fenrir's path would one day cross his own in darkness. So the Aesir gathered. They crafted chains strong, heavy, forged from iron and magic. They approached Fenrir with gentle voices. "Let us test your strength," they said softly. The wolf, still playful and proud, agreed. He allowed them to bind him, and with one effortless movement, he broke the chains. They crafted a second chain, thicker, heavier, reinforced with runes. The wolf allowed himself to be bound again, and again, with a single twist, he shattered it. The gods trembled, for the chains had been forged to restrain giants, and Fenrir broke them like thread. It became clear that no ordinary metal could hold him. So the gods turned to the dwarves of Svartalfheim. They asked for a chain unlike any other, a chain forged not from physical strength, but from impossibility. The dwarves created Gleipnir, the soft ribbon made of 6 impossible things: the breath of a fish, the roots of a mountain, the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the sinews of a bear, and the spittle of a bird. It looked harmless, delicate, silken. Fenrir's eyes narrowed. He sensed deceit. The gods assured him it was only another test, a game, a challenge to his strength. But Fenrir felt unease settle into his bones like cold frost. "I will allow this," he said, "only if one of you places your hand in my mouth as a sign of good faith." Silence washed over the gods. None stepped forward, except Tyr. Tyr, who had fed him. Tyr, who had comforted him. Tyr, whom Fenrir trusted above all others. With quiet sorrow in his heart, Tyr placed his hand gently between the wolf's sharp teeth. Fenrir looked at him with grief. Not anger, not hatred. Grief. Then the gods wrapped Gleipnir around him. The ribbon tightened. Fenrir pulled, strained, twisted. He summoned all his strength, strength enough to break mountains, but Gleipnir held, unbreakable, silent, cold as fate. In that moment, the wolf understood. He had been betrayed, not by Tyr, but by destiny, by fear, by the will of the gods. With a howl of anguish, Fenrir clamped his jaws down. Tyr did not pull away. He did not shout. He simply closed his eyes as Fenrir tore his hand from his arm. The gods stood in silence, not triumphant, not joyful, but quietly, unbearably sad. For in binding the wolf, they had bound their fates, and they had broken something precious between themselves and Loki. When Loki learned of what had happened, a shadow long sleeping inside him stirred awake, a sorrow sharper than any blade, a fury older than his laughter. Something cracked inside his heart, something small, something fragile, something necessary. And from that crack, darkness began to seep. Not all at once, not loudly, but slowly, quietly, inevitably. The path ahead for Loki would no longer be shaped by playful tricks or harmless games. It would be shaped by grief, by love twisted into bitterness, and by destinies that even Odin could not unwind. But that is the story of the next part, the part where light dims and shadows stretch across Asgard like the first quiet breath of a coming storm. After the binding of Fenrir, Asgard grew quieter. A stillness settled over the golden city, not the peaceful stillness of calm mornings, but the uneasy quiet that follows an unspoken sorrow. The gods moved through the halls as they always had, yet something had changed in the air, a subtle heaviness, a fragile tension, a faint echo of loss. Tyr carried his pain with quiet dignity. He did not complain, did not wish for pity, did not curse his fate. He simply wrapped his wounded arm with linen, held his chin steady, and continued to serve justice as he always had. But when he looked at Fenrir, bound, silenced, betrayed, a soft ache flickered behind his eyes, a sadness no words could soothe. Fenrir lay upon the cold rock where Gleipnir held him tight. The ribbon glowed faintly, unbreakable, immovable. The wolf no longer struggled. He knew it was useless. His breaths were slow, deep, trembling with a mixture of sorrow and quiet fury. And whenever he remembered Tyr's hand between his teeth, his jaws tensed with grief rather than triumph. He had not wanted to harm the one he loved, but destiny had demanded it. The gods visited him rarely. Some felt fear, some felt guilt, others felt only a distant sense of duty. But Odin came often. He stood beside the bound wolf in thoughtful silence. He knew the prophecy. He knew what Fenrir would become. He knew what would happen on the day the sky split open in flames. But Odin also knew that destiny is not always cruelty, sometimes it is simply truth. Yet even Odin's presence could not ease the cold weight in Loki's heart. For Loki had learned what happened to his children not from gentle explanation, but from whispers carried to him like cruel flakes of winter. He learned that Jörmungandr had been cast into the sea. He learned that Hel had been given a realm of the dead, far from sunlight, far from laughter. He learned that Fenrir, his beloved son, had been tricked, chained, and left alone on a stone island beneath the open sky. Something in Loki folded inward, something fragile and bright inside him dimmed. He felt as though the world he had tried to belong to, the world he had tried to serve, had turned its back on him without even looking into his eyes. He was not furious immediately, nor vengeful, nor hateful. Instead, he was simply sad. A deep, low sadness that weighed on him like a winter night that never ends. He stopped laughing as often. His pranks grew sharper, less playful, slipping from harmless mischief into quiet acts of rebellion. He visited places alone, wandering through forests where moonlight rested on frozen leaves. He walked along riverbanks, letting cold water numb his thoughts. He stared into the distance for long moments, as though searching for something he had lost long ago. Thor noticed first. He tried to speak with Loki, but Loki offered only brief smiles, hollow and distant. Frigg noticed too. She tried to soothe him, but Loki drifted away. Even Odin approached him with gentle words, hoping to anchor him before his shadows grew deeper. But Loki looked at Odin with eyes that held questions too painful to voice. What would you do, All-Father, if fate tore your children from you? Would you still call it wisdom? Would you still call it necessary? Odin said nothing. Some wounds cannot be healed by truth, and some truths cannot be softened by wisdom. Still, life in Asgard moved on. The seasons shifted. The gods continued their duties, and Loki, though quieter, remained among them. He attended feasts, helped with tasks, even joined in laughter from time to time, but each moment felt thinner, as though a part of him hovered somewhere far away. It was not until a single tragic moment that Loki's path fully turned, a moment that cracked open the storm sleeping inside him, sending shadows flooding into the light. That moment was the death of Balder. But before we reach that sorrow, we must return once more to the bond between Loki and Fenrir. For that bond, once broken, became the quiet root of all that followed. Bound upon the cold rock, Fenrir expected Loki to visit him. He waited, ears pricked at every shifting breeze, hoping to hear the soft footsteps of the father he loved. But Loki did not come. He could not. To see his son bound, betrayed, alone, it would have shattered whatever fragile strength he still clung to. And Loki feared that if he saw Fenrir in chains, he would never forgive Odin, nor Asgard, nor himself. Fenrir, however, did not understand. Each day without Loki felt like a wound that would not close. The gods had betrayed him, and now, so had his father. The loneliness grew sharper, the silence heavier, the anger deeper. A seed of bitterness took root in the wolf's heart, a seed that would one day grow into a roar that shook the heavens. Loki wandered, lost in a storm of guilt and sorrow. He tried to bury the grief. He tried to forget. He tried to be the god he had once been, light, clever, bright. But his laughter echoed strangely in his own ears, hollow and thin. His smile felt like a mask, and the more he tried to hold himself together, the more he felt himself beginning to unravel. The gods of Asgard noticed the change. Some watched with concern, some with suspicion, some with quiet fear. For when a spirit as sharp as Loki begins to fracture, the break is never clean, and never without consequence. In those days, Loki began to act in ways he scarcely understood. His tricks became unpredictable, his words carried sharper edges, his thoughts tangled with shadows, whispers of hurt, threads of quiet resentment. He did not plan betrayal, he did not seek revenge, not yet. But pain has a way of clouding the heart, blurring the line between right and wrong, between justice and vengeance, between sorrow and cruelty. One evening, as the moon hovered pale above Asgard, Loki stood alone on a high balcony. He watched the lights of the city flicker softly. He watched the distant glow of Valhalla. He watched the stars scatter across the sky like silver runes. And he wondered if he still belonged among the gods, or if he ever truly had. The night wind brushed against him, cold and gentle, carrying with it the distant howl of Fenrir. The sound pierced Loki's heart, a cry of abandonment, a cry of betrayal, a cry that echoed his own silent grief. Tears gathered in Loki's eyes, not tears of anger, tears of loss. He pressed a hand to his chest, as though trying to hold the pieces of his heart in place. But the cracks widened, the shadows deepened, and Loki knew in that quiet moment, that he was drifting too far from the light to return easily. Yet still he stayed. Still he walked among the gods. Still he tried in small ways, in quiet ways, to remain a part of the world that had become his home. But the Aesir's trust had begun to thin. Whispers moved through the halls. Unease stirred beneath polished surfaces. They sensed something changing in Loki, though they could not name it, and Loki felt their distance. Every glance that lingered too long, every conversation that hushed when he entered, every moment of uncertainty that rippled through the air around him, he felt himself becoming a stranger, not through choice, but through the slow erosion of trust. A trust he had once cherished, a trust he had once believed unbreakable. And then came the day when everything shattered. The day when Balder, the gentle god, beloved by all, radiant as sunlight on water, began to dream of death. The day Frigg went to every corner of the world to secure promises of safety for her son. The day one small, fragile plant was overlooked. The day Loki learned its name. But that is a story of sorrow for the next chapter. A chapter where light dims to twilight, where trust breaks, where Loki crosses a line he cannot return from. A chapter where fate tightens its grip, and the first cold winds of Ragnarök begin to stir. For now, let the story rest in your heart as softly as falling snow. Loki's journey from light to shadow is not a sudden collapse, but a long, quiet unraveling woven with love, loss, grief, and destiny. This is the tale of Balder, the gentle, bright son of Odin and Frigg, and of a hush that fell across the 9 realms. It begins with a dream, as many true things do, soft and strange, like mist gathering at the edge of a lake. Balder dreamed one night as the world turned beneath him. His dream was not vivid with color or sound, but heavy with the sense of an ending. As if the air itself pressed gentle questions upon his chest, he saw shadows moving at the edge of his vision and heard a silence that was not empty but full of meaning. When he woke, his smile did not return at once. It hovered at the lip of his face as though frightened to step fully into light. He spoke little of the dream at first, for dreams are delicate things and often break when named. Yet the whisper of unease spread like a pale thread through Asgard, as soft as the whispering of leaves in Yggdrasil. Frigg noticed before anyone else. She watched Balder in those morning hours with a mother's gentle alarm. The All-Mother felt the tremor behind his gentle eyes and decided to act as only a devoted parent would, quietly and with entire devotion. She left the warm halls of Asgard and walked through the 9 realms, her steps slow and purposeful. Where she went, the air seemed to hold its breath, listening to the careful measures of a mother's promise. She visited the smallest of creatures and the oldest of stones, asking each to give its pledge that no harm would befall her son. She did not demand oaths with thunder. She sought them with gentle words and a softness that bent even ancient wills. To the stone she asked for silence. To the fire she asked for restraint. To the cold she asked for mercy. To the beasts and birds she asked for gentleness. She walked into the dim world of hell and spoke with the quiet there, asking it to spare the bright boy who walked under the suns. In every corner she came, the beings who had room in their hearts for such a request answered yes. They swore, in their own ways, that Balder would be safe until only one small thing remained unpledged. Frigg had gone to everyone, she said, even to the smallest sprout and the most stubborn stone. All things, she told Odin later, had sworn an oath, but there was one being she had not thought to ask, not because she did not love it, but because it seemed too humble to harm anyone, a small mistletoe sprig that grew tucked in a quiet place. She smiled then, shaking her head at her own oversight, and promised herself to speak with it if ever the need arose. In her soft diligence she had touched almost everything, and in doing so she wove a web of quiet safety that spread like warm light through the halls of Asgard. The gods, touched by her devotion, took an unusual delight in the game that followed. They would throw things at Balder to prove the oaths true. It began as play, soft jests and warm laughter, yet each throw became a ritual, each miss a silent hymn to Frigg's care. Spears passed like ribbons through the air and fell harmlessly aside. Arrows bent away. Stones thudded into the ground as if guided by an unseen hand. Balder laughed more fully with each near miss, his mirth like the sound of a quiet stream tumbling over moss. The halls of Asgard filled with a serene joy. Even the Valkyries paused from their distant duties to watch. Loki watched too, but his watching was not the same as the others. He stood at the edge of the play, his shadow folding quietly in on itself like a bird tucking its wing. There was curiosity in him, always, like a restless bird scratching at a window pane. He watched the games with a silent hunger for novelty, for mischief, for a twist of story that would make the world look different when it turned. He was not cruel by habit, nor was he unkind by nature. He was clever, and cleverness sometimes reaches for contrast simply to see the world's face change. On this day, his eyes landed upon the small, uncloven thing Frigg had overlooked, the soft green of a mistletoe twig hiding under an old root. It was unremarkable, almost apologetic in its simplicity. Loki bent and picked it like one might pick a secret from the grass. In that movement the hush around him deepened, though no one in the hall felt it yet. He held the sprig with cool fingers and thought of jokes and twists, as he often did. He imagined the surprise, the sharp intake of breath, when something unexpected intruded upon the warm game. He did not mean true harm. His mischief was usually a ripple, not a flood. Still, there was a darkness in curiosity untempered by care, and this small act would become heavy with consequence. Loki fashioned a dart from mistletoe, fine and slender, a green hush at its tip. He found the blind god Hertha, who stood apart from the laughter and light because he could not see them. Hertha was gentle and quiet, loved by the gods for his steady nature, yet excluded from the play by the simple fact of his sightless eyes. Loki saw in him a way to complete a scene of mischief, a perfect instrument to turn the ritual into a play whose final act none predicted. He approached Hertha with a flattering whisper, soft as winter dusk. "Come, brother," he said, voice silk on stone. "Do not let blindness make you shy of joy." He placed the mistletoe-tipped dart in Hertha's hand with the smoothness of a trickster handing over a prop. He guided the blind god's arm toward Balder with the practiced ease of a storyteller setting a stage. Hertha moved without malice, his gestures full of trust and the bright desire to belong. There was no thought of peril in his heart, only the wish to partake, to join the laughter he could not see. And so the dart flew, held by a hand that did not know it carried a wound. It found its mark. Balder, shining like dawn, fell as if the very light had stumbled. The hall inhaled and did not exhale. Time slowed, as if the world had put on a heavy cloak. No fanfare, no thunder, only the soft, terrible sound of a body touching stone. A silence spread, absolute and trembling, like the stillness after a cathedral bell has fallen mute. For all their strength and their oaths, nothing had promised protection against the mistletoe's whisper. Frigg's net of vows was flawless, but a single overlooked green tendril had slipped through like an unmade seam. The gods gathered round as if the air itself had frozen into reverence. There was no clamor, only the careful rustle of robes and the muffled sound of gods holding their breath. Odin stood very still, his one remaining eye heavy with the knowledge of fates. His face a smooth, carved mask of sorrow and bewilderment. Frigg sank to the floor, the sound of her grief small and honest as wind through a simple reed. Tyr, who had given his hand to bind Fenrir, stood at the circle's edge, his jaw set as though chewing on a hard, bitter truth. Thor's face was a storm held back by iron hands, his thunder stilled in the depth of his chest. Even Loki, who had orchestrated the moment, felt the air change beneath his feet from amusement into a cold he had not anticipated. They carried Balder gently, as though his body were made of thin glass and might shatter further with roughness. They laid him upon a bier of pale wood, as if to keep him close to earth and yet ready for a soft voyage beyond it. The walls of Asgard dimmed their light as if in sympathy. The torches burned lower and the shadows lengthened, folding the great hall into a quiet grave. Word traveled like a slow chant across the realms, and wherever it went, beings paused, trees hush, rivers slow, even the small creatures of Midgard crowded close to their burrows. Grief turned into ritual, ritual turned into ceremony, and the gods wrapped Balder in silence. Men from Midgard came in humble procession, not bold, not loud, but tender as they walked. They laid flowers and simple things upon the bier. They sang as soft as the wind through grain. Animals in the fields bowed their heads. Birds fell silent on their branches. The 9 realms itself seemed to circle round the fallen brightness, attentive and repentant. If the world had been a harp, one string had been snapped, and the sound left behind was a note of lingering sorrow. Odin resolved to send Hermother, the swift messenger, to Hel to ask for Balder's return. He sent him with an escort of quiet hope, with instructions gentle as breath. Go to the world of shades, speak softly, and ask what may be asked of the rulers of the silent places. Hermother rode a long, steady road between worlds, his horse's hooves whispering across the waters that separate life and the rest. He reached Hel's dark field with a bow in his heart and a soft request upon his tongue. He spoke to Hel of Balder's light and asked whether she might release him. Hel listened with the patience of cold stone, and then answered with the slow, even song of the dead. She would free Balder if every being in all realms would weep for him. So the Aesir carried the plea back like a small, fragile ember, and set about their task anew. Every creature, using all their small and great ways, was asked to grieve for Balder, to plead for his return. The oceans sighed, and the trees bent low. Even great beasts gave low, shuddering cries that carried to distant hills. Dwarves let the anvils cool, and elves answered with pale-sung harmonies. Only one being refused or hesitated, Loki, in hiding, disguised in a shape the gods did not know. He stood aside from the sea of mourning, a knot of something hard inside his chest. He watched the world sweep around him in grief, and felt himself both outside and within the tide, an island of frost in a sea of warmth. But even Loki could not remain wholly unmoved, and in some stories he lent himself to the grieving as well, moving through crowds in shapes and voices that slipped under notice, yet a mischievous and cruel thought persisted, like a dry twig that will not stain under rain. He saw an opportunity in Hertha's exclusion, a place where mischief might find a shadow to hide in a shape not his own, or perhaps his own as only he truly was. He approached the blind god with a new voice. He guided the hand that would again shape fate, and with a trembling that was part reverence and part tragedy, Hertha obeyed. He took up the mistletoe once more, this time with a hand heavy with the wish to help, and let the green dart fly across the quiet. It struck Balder true and quiet as a falling leaf. Balder's breath left the world again as if the light had been gently plucked out of the sky. Asgard went still deeper into mourning, then into a silence so absolute it seemed to press inward on the breath of the gods. Loki's breath caught in his chest like a bird in a net. He could not name the thing he felt. Was it triumph? Was it ruin? Was it the first taste of a bitter fruit he had planted himself? He had meant only a trick. Fate had been waiting with terrible patience to weave it into a design none could unmake. When the truth of Loki's treachery became known, the reaction among the gods was slow and heavy. Like a winter snowfall that covers a field in one patient white, they sought Loki with hands that had once clasped his in brotherhood. They found him at last, and bound his hands with cords of runed iron. They brought him before the assembly in Asgard. where even stones seemed to listen with grief. There was no cruel show, no triumphant cry, only the deep, hushed voices of those who had lost more than a comrade, who had lost a bright light that warmed their halls. Odin spoke then, not with the spear of command, but with the measured stillness of a man who must carry what cannot be changed. He declared Loki guilty of a wound beyond simple reparation, and the assembly agreed upon a punishment born of sorrow and necessity. They bound Loki in a dark cave beneath the earth, and there they placed him upon sharp stones. Overhead they hung a serpent, one that dripped venom by slow, unmoving drops. His faithful Sigyn stayed by his side, gathering the poison in a bowl to spare him from constant burning. She returned the bowl to its place, and when it filled she would run to empty it, and the venom would drip again upon Loki's face, and he would cry out, and the sound would echo through the caverns like distant thunder. In those cries the halls of Asgard heard a sorrow that matched their own, and even the stars seemed to turn their faces away. Tyr, who had given his hand to save the worlds from Fenrir's wild strength, held his scar as a quiet stone of memory. He walked the halls with the weight of his loss, neither bitter nor triumphant, simply steady as the river that keeps going. Frigg, broken and gentle, wrapped her arms around the quiet that remained, and tried to sew the world's ragged edges with soft patience. Balder's body was placed upon a great funeral ship, and set aflame upon a sea as still as glass, and the smoke rose high, a pale column that braided memory with sky. Those who loved him, gods and mortals, elves and dwarves, even the small creatures who had once paused in play, watched until the flames dimmed and the ash settled like confetti of sorrow upon the waves. Even in the depths of grief and the harshness of judgment, the story held a small, stubborn mercy. For as much as Loki's mischief had opened a wound, it also reminded the gods of the fragile mesh that held them together. They had learned, in the bitterest way possible, how easily trust could fray, and how fierce a mother's love could be when woven through the 9 realms. The world would never again be as it had been before Balder's bright laughter fell silent. And yet it continued softly, painfully, with a new respect for the delicate threads that bind life and fate. And Loki, bound beneath the dripping serpent, carried his punishment like a slow-burning sorrow in his bones. He had become the instrument of an ending none had wished to see, and in that dark cave even his cleverness could find no way to unmake what his hands had set in motion. Sigyn's bowl, small and tireless, became the only tender thing in that place of stone, and the rhythm of her footsteps back and forth was a quiet hymn beneath the roar of the world's grief. Rest now, my friend, in the hush that follows this tale. Let the sorrow settle like a slow snowfall on your shoulders and then melt away into soft thought. For the 9 realms go on, and even the deepest night keeps the promise of dawn hidden in its long, patient folds. After the sorrow of Balder's fall settled over the 9 realms like a thin veil of frost, time moved forward with slow, measured steps. Asgard remained dim in the wake of that tragedy. The great hall felt emptier. The torches burned softer. The laughter that once rang through its golden chambers now faded into distant memory. Odin walked its corridors with quiet heaviness, his one eye carrying the weight of all that had been lost. He had seen visions of endings before, carried in the waters of Mimir's well, folded into the runes that carved themselves into his spirit. But after Balder, those visions no longer felt distant. They pressed close like cold breath on the back of his neck, whispering that the tapestry of fate had begun to unravel. And somewhere, in the deep silence beneath the world, Loki lay bound beneath dripping venom, Sigyn's patient hands relieving what pain she could. His punishment echoed through the realms like the distant growl of a storm cloud forming. The threads of fate tightened, and the first true shift toward the end began. It started slowly, almost gently. The seasons grew cold just a little too early. The winds blew with a new sharpness, Frost crept along Midgard's edges with a persistence that made farmers glance nervously at the sky. Winter always came with its challenges, but this winter felt deeper than any before. The kind of cold that settled into the bones of travelers and did not leave. The first winter arrived. Snow fell in broad, lazy flakes, covering the world in white. Rivers slowed beneath thin sheets of ice. Children pressed warm hands to windows, marveling at the early stillness. But the stillness did not leave. The cold did not lift. Spring did not come. After many months, when the people of Midgard looked toward the horizon, they saw only gray clouds, no Thor, no sun strong enough to melt the crust of frozen earth. The second winter followed the first, as though the world had forgotten how to turn its face toward warmth. Villages buried themselves deeper into their shelters. Fires burned day and night, eating through wood stores that should have lasted whole seasons. The cold pressed against the windows like a living creature. Wind howled through the trees with a long, mournful voice. And above them, the sky dimmed further. Still no spring. Still no summer. The third winter arrived without ceremony. It simply appeared, its breath creeping down from the mountains, its snow sweeping over Midgard in thick white waves. 3 winters, one after another. No flowering fields to break the cycle, no warm rains, no renewal. The land grew tired, exhausted, wrung out by frost. People looked at one another with hollow eyes. Food grew scarce. The animals that survived the first winter fell in the second. By the third, even the strong-willed among humankind felt their resolve weaken. Some abandoned the ways of peace, turning their desperation into conflict. Fights broke out over crumbs of stored grain. Brothers argued. Whole families fractured. The cold did not simply freeze their homes. It began to freeze their hearts. When the sky darkened for long hours, wolves prowled at the edges of villages, and among them ran 2 mighty shapes, Skjöll and Hati, the sons of Fenrir. These wolves did not hunger for flesh, they hungered for celestial prey. Skjöll chased the sun across the sky, Hati pursued the moon. Their paws thundered over the heavens, their shadows flickering across the frost-covered earth. Every day the sun grew dimmer, outrun by Skjöll's terrible pace. Every night the moon stumbled, losing ground to Hati's relentless pursuit. The world's light flickered like a candle under a restless wind. Children looked upward with fear. The old whispered of prophecies long spoken, and the wolves grew closer. During these long winters, the 9 realms felt the shift in their own ways. In Jotunheim, the giants stirred, sensing the change in the wind, a change they had known would one day come. In Alfheim, the light elves dimmed their lanterns, gathering together in silent clusters as the sky lost its glow. In Svartalfheim, the dwarves hammered weapons quietly but more urgently, working deep in the mountain shadows where even cold dared not enter. And in Helheim, the gentle Queen Hel watched the snow fall beyond her iron gates with a calm, steady gaze. Even she felt the tremor beneath the surface of the world, the tremor of endings awakening. Back in Asgard, the gods stood vigil. Each felt the weight of 3 winters pressing against the golden walls. Heimdall, ever watchful, rested his hand on the Gjallarhorn. Though he had not yet lifted it to his lips, its silence was heavy, its promise even heavier. Freyja stared at the empty skies, feeling the absence of sunlight cut deeper than any blade. Freyja walked through the halls of Asgard with tears she would never show, her heart aching for the humans below who cried out in hunger and fear. Tyr sat quietly, his one hand resting in his lap, knowing that the world's balance had begun its long collapse. Even Thor felt subdued, his storms reluctant to break through the frozen air, his strength unable to warm what fate had grown too cold. And Odin felt it most of all. Fimbulwinter, the great winter, the endless cold, the quiet, terrible herald of what was coming. He would stand upon the high balcony of Valaskjalf, his cloak wrapped tight around him, his single eye turned toward Midgard. He watched the snow fall for days that blurred into weeks. He watched the humans struggle, watched the fires dim, watched the wolves race across the sky. He placed his hand on the railing of the balcony, feeling the frost forming under his fingers, and he whispered to himself words no god ever wished to admit. It has begun. In his deepest dreams, those half-visions brought by runes and by the price he once paid at Mimir's, well, he saw shadows moving toward him. He felt the roots of Yggdrasil tremble just faintly, as though the great tree had exhaled with a weary sigh. The Allfather had carried many burdens, but this one settled heavier than all others. He knew that the long winters were not a simple twist of season. They were a message, a slow, gentle knock on the door of destiny. Still, Odin did not surrender to fear. He prepared, quietly, patiently. He visited the ravens Hugin and Munin, sending them across the realms each morning, and their reports grew darker with each return. He sharpened Gungnir, not for battle, but as a reminder to himself that even kings must brace for the storm. He walked often to the well of Urd, speaking softly with the Norns about fate's weaving, though they gave few answers. Fate, once woven, is difficult to unthread. In the quiet corners of Asgard, the gods gathered in low conversation. There was no panic in their voices, only a solemn understanding that they were moving toward a moment none had hoped to see. They spoke of duty, not victory, of courage, not denial, of the dignity in preparing for what must be met head-on. But even as the gods prepared, the world outside grew darker. On a morning colder than all others, Hati finally closed the distance between himself and the moon. The moon trembled, then vanished into the wolf's jaws, swallowed whole. Night fell with a heaviness that made the stars flicker like dying embers. And just days later, Skuld, relentless and ravenous, leapt upward and consumed the Sunday. The world went dark, not dim, not grey, dark. A darkness so complete it felt alive. Midgard froze under a sky without warmth. The last survivors of the long winter huddled together in crumbling homes, leaning into one another for comfort as the final light left the heavens. The sounds of argument and violence faded too. There is little strength left for conflict when the world has grown so quiet. What remained was fear, and whispers, and the soft sigh of wind moving through abandoned fields. In the darkness, the wolves prowled the sky, their howls rolling like long, sorrowful songs across the frozen world. Icicles hung from eaves like daggers. The last fires burned thin and weak. Even the rivers lay still. The world held its breath, and then from the highest tower of Asgard a single figure stepped forward. Odin, his cloak whipped in the wind, his face carved with old sorrow, his one eye reflecting not fear but acceptance. He knew what came next. He had always known. But knowledge is not the same as readiness. Even gods tremble at the edge of fate. From where he stood, Odin felt the first true break in the fabric of the 9 realms. A quiet tremor that rippled through branches, roots, mountain bones, ocean depths. It was not a violent break. It was a soft, steady shift, a sign that the final act of the cosmos had begun to stir. Yet for all the darkness pressing close, there was still calm in his posture, still dignity, still purpose. He placed a hand upon the cold stone and whispered into the wind, "We will meet what comes." Below him, the gods gathered in silent unity. They felt the cold, they felt the fear, but they also felt something else, the quiet strength born from facing destiny together. And so they waited, with breath held, with hearts steady, with eyes open. The long winter had not come to destroy their courage. It had come to prepare it. The snow fell. The wolves ran across the sky. The darkness thickened, and the gods of Asgard stood ready for the dawn that would not rise, the dawn that would be broken by something else entirely. But that is the next story. For now, rest in the quiet chill of this endless winter. Feel the hush of snow settling softly across the 9 realms. Let the silence fall around you like a deep, slow breath. For the storm that follows will be the storm that ends the age of gods. The long winter had settled over the 9 realms like a final exhale. Snow drifted endlessly, soft as falling ash. Darkness wrapped itself around mountains and meadows with the patience of an old sorrow. Midgard lay quiet beneath frozen clouds. Asgard stood still beneath a sky without sun or moon. And the gods, gathered in silence, felt the brittle edge of fate approaching. Odin stood on the highest balcony of Valaskjalf, the wind turning his cloak into a dark banner. His one eye searched the horizon, though he already sensed what was coming. He felt it in the trembling roots of Yggdrasil. He felt it in the muted beat of the world. He felt it in the cold, aching hush that followed Fimbulwinter. The time woven into the runes, the time whispered by the Norns, the time lurking behind every prophecy had finally arrived. Far below, the wolves that had devoured the sun and moon still prowled the sky, but now, even they slowed their pace, sensing the shift in the air. The wind changed. It grew heavy, vibrating with an ancient, terrible melody, the first note of the end. In that moment, Heimdall opened his eyes, eyes that could see across realms, eyes that could pierce through mists and illusions, eyes that had been waiting, always waiting, for this single instant. His hand rose toward the Gjallarhorn. The horn rested in its sacred cradle, carved with runes older than mountains. It hummed faintly as his fingers brushed its edge, as though recognizing the one destined to wake the world with its cry. Heimdall lifted it to his lips. The air grew still. The snow paused mid-fall. Even time itself seemed to hold its breath. And then he blew. The sound was not a sound. It was a force. It was a trembling through every corner of creation. It echoed across the sky like the cracking of a great frost. It vibrated through roots and rivers, through stone and star. The mountains shook. The oceans rose. The 9 realms trembled as if remembering ancient fears. In Helheim, spirits lifted their heads. In Jotunheim, giants stirred from long slumber. In Muspelheim, fire giants paused, listening with hungry anticipation. And in Asgard, the gods lifted their weapons with slow, solemn hands. Heimdall lowered the horn, his face calm and resolute. "It begins," he whispered, and every god heard it not with ears, but with their hearts. The first to answer the horn was Fenrir, bound upon the cold stone by Gleipnir. The wolf felt the ribbon tremble. The impossible threads twisted. They groaned. They frayed. And then, with a single violent motion, Fenrir broke free. The sound of the chain snapping echoed like a thunderclap rolling across eternity. Fenrir rose to his feet, muscles rippling beneath thick fur, eyes glowing with a fury forged from betrayal and long years of silence. He stretched his jaws wide, so wide they touched the earth and the sky. A growl rumbled from deep within him, shaking the stone beneath his paws. But beneath that growl lay something more ancient than rage. The sorrow of a child wronged, of trust broken, of destiny forced upon him. He leapt across the barren fields, each step cracking the ground. He was unstoppable, he was inevitable, and he was not the only one awakened by the horn. In the deepest ocean trenches, darkness stirred. Waves rose and fell in great trembling walls. A coil of scales as large as continents twisted in the deep. Jormungandr, the world's serpent, opened its immeasurable eyes. The waters shuddered. Fish scattered. Whales fled. Storms erupted as the serpent rose from the deep. its vast body breaking through the surface like the emergence of a new mountain. Lightning arced across the sky, drawn to the serpent's immense form. Jörmungandr hissed, and its breath thick with venom turned the air to poison. The sea churned, the horizon darkened, and the serpent began moving toward land, toward fate, toward Thor. In Helheim, the dead stirred. The gates, forged from the silence of centuries, swung open with a wail that sounded like 1,000 forgotten voices sighing in unison. Loki stood before them. He was no longer the smiling trickster, no longer the restless wanderer, no longer the clever shadow among the gods. Punishment and venom had carved his face into something sharper, something colder, something broken beyond repair. His eyes no longer danced with mischief, they glowed with a sorrow turned into fire. At his side stood Hel, his daughter, calm and pale, carrying the quiet dignity of the dead. Her army souls of those who had died dishonorable deaths followed her like a tide of cold mist. Their steps made no sound. Their eyes held no warmth. They marched not out of hatred, but out of duty. And Loki, voice low as distant thunder, whispered, "It is time." From Muspelheim, the flames roared higher. The fire giants gathered, forming a horizon of burning silhouettes. At their head strode Surtur, black as night, crowned with fire, holding a sword that burned bright enough to blind the sun if the sun had still existed. Each step he took melted the ground. Each swing of his blade cast sparks that ignited the sky. His presence alone was the promise of the world's end. The army of Muspelheim marched through the Bifrost, its rainbow surface cracking beneath waves of flame. The bridge shattered under their feet, falling into the void like broken crystal. Even Asgard's great defenses could not withstand such heat. The gods gathered in their armor. Their faces were steady, though sorrow lingered behind every gaze. They were not fighting to win. They were fighting because honor demanded it, because duty demanded it, because the world needed them to stand, even when standing could not save it. Odin mounted Sleipnir, the 8-legged steed who had carried him through countless realms. He rode toward the plains of Vigrid, the great battlefield where fate would unfold. The gods followed him, each step echoing like a drumbeat at the end of time, and thus began the final battles, slow, inevitable, heavy as winter ice cracking beneath old trees. The first clash came between Freyja and Surtur. Freyja, god of peace and plenty, held no weapon fit for this fight, for he had given away his magic sword long ago in a moment of love. Yet he walked into battle with calm determination, carrying a stag's antler like a king of the ancient forests. Surtur's blade burned with the heat of creation's first spark. Freyja's antler glowed with the gentle strength of life. They met in the center of the field, and when Surtur's sword struck, the world flinched. Freyja fell. His death was quiet, beautiful, tragic. Tyr faced Garm, the monstrous hound who guarded the gates of hell. The two clashed like old rivals, one a god who had lost a hand to protect the worlds, the other a beast who had waited centuries for release. They fought until the ground beneath them turned dark with blood. In the end, Tyr struck a final blow, and Garm struck one as well. They fell together, their breaths fading into the cold air as one. Thor met Jörmungandr in a storm of lightning and venom. The serpent reared above him, its shadow covering half the sky. Thunder rolled from Thor's chest as he raised Mjolnir. Lightning danced across the battlefield. The two forces collided, god and serpent, storm and sea, destiny and prophecy. Thor struck with the strength of 1,000 storms. Jörmungandr lashed with the fury of the oceans, and with one final thunderous blow, Thor shattered the serpent's skull. But venom filled the air, venom thick as night. Thor staggered, took 9 slow steps, and fell as quietly as a tree returning to the earth. The sky dimmed further. Odin rode into battle against Fenrir. The wolf towered above him, muscles swollen with ancient strength, eyes burning with betrayal, sorrow, rage. Odin did not flinch. He lifted Gungnir. Fenrir lunged. The god and the wolf met in a silence so deep it broke the world. And when the dust lifted, Odin was gone. Fenrir stood triumphant, though triumph felt hollow in his chest. But Odin's death did not go unanswered. Vidar, the silent god, stepped forward. He placed his thick boot upon Fenrir's jaw, forced it open, and with a strength born of quiet years and destined purpose, he tore the wolf's mouth apart. Fenrir fell. The earth shook beneath his body, but the sky was not yet done with sorrow. At last Heimdall faced Loki. Two watchmen, two opposites, two beings who had stood at the edges of the world, one guarding its order, one testing its boundaries. They circled one another in the dim light, eyes filled not with hatred, but with weary recognition. Loki struck first. Heimdall responded with calm, measured grace. Their clash sounded like the ringing of distant bells. They fought until their breaths grew heavy, until their steps slowed, until their spirits flickered. And then, as though fate wished to bind them eternally, they delivered their final blows at the same time. Both fell, both stilled, and above them, the sky cracked open. Surtur lifted his burning sword. He swung it wide. A wave of fire surged across the realms. Forests ignited, oceans boiled, mountains melted. Yggdrasil itself groaned, its branches shuddering, its roots quivering deep beneath the earth. The world burned, the world drowned, the world collapsed, and the stars one by one went out. The fire spread like a quiet storm, rolling across the 9 realms in waves of slow, deliberate destruction. It did not roar, it did not scream, it simply moved, inevitable as the turning of seasons, calm as a final breath. Surtur stood at the heart of the flames, his sword raised like a sun born too late. The burning blade cast long shadows across the collapsing world, its light bending around the skeletons of forests and the ruins of mountains. Under that harsh glow, the realms seemed to dissolve into shimmering dust. The air trembled with heat, yet the silence felt colder than any winter. The oceans surged in response, great waves rising like the backs of ancient beasts. Water swallowed entire coastlines, creeping inland as if to soothe the burning earth. Steam rose in vast clouds where sea met flame, filling the sky with a pale, shimmering fog. It was neither water nor fire, but something in between, a soft veil through which the last shapes of creation faded. Jörmungandr's lifeless body drifted in the churning waters, its enormous coils tangled with the wreckage of ships and forests. The sea around it bubbled with venom, turning dark and luminous, as though reflecting the faint memories of storms. Thor's broken form lay nearby on the shattered rocks, the stillness around him as profound as the silence after thunder. He had not fallen with a cry, he had simply stopped, as though the storm within him had returned to the sky that birthed it. Giants fled through collapsing fields of molten stone, their thunderous footsteps drowned by the shifting earth beneath them. Creatures of all kinds, small and mighty, ancient and new, ran from the flames or from the rising tides, their shapes disappearing one by one, into fog, into water, into fire. In Asgard, the golden halls melted. The great bridge, Bifrost, already shattered, fell away completely into the void, its last fragments glinting like fading stars as they vanished. Valaskjalf cracked down the middle, its silver roof folding inward like the wings of a dying bird. Odin's throne stood for a moment longer, empty, solemn, a monument to a king who had faced his fate with unflinching eyes. And then the flames claimed it too. Vigrid, the battlefield, became a plain of burning cinders. Surtur's sword traced long arcs of flame across the sky, and with each movement the world beneath groaned, roots snapped, branches split. Yggdrasil shuddered, The great tree, the axis of all existence, felt the fires licking its trunk. The bark, ancient and thick, began to glow like smoldering embers, its leaves shriveled, falling like sparks drifting on a slow wind. From deep within its core, a mournful creak echoed through all realms, the sound of a being older than gods preparing to yield. Yet Yggdrasil did not fall quickly. Even in its agony, it held the 9 realms together, its roots clutching at the fabric of reality, its branches straining to shelter whatever small remnants of life still clung to existence. The tree resisted, not with force, but with persistence, a quiet dignity. Beneath its trembling branches, the last battles of Ragnarök reached their silent end. Heimdall lay beside Loki, their forms still, their weapons resting at their sides. No hatred twisted their faces, only the exhaustion of 2 beings who had fulfilled their final tasks. One who had watched over the realms with unwavering vigilance, the other who had challenged every rule ever woven. Their destinies intertwined in collision and completion. Now both returned to the stillness from which all things rise. Fenrir's enormous body lay broken, its fur singed, its breath gone. Beside it stood Vidar, calm even in victory, his silent gaze turned toward the burning horizon. He felt no triumph, only inevitability. Garm and Tyr lay together, their blood mingling with ash and molten sand. In death, they seemed almost at peace, a guardian and a judge, each fulfilling the purpose carved for them by threads older than time. Freyja's fallen form rested beneath a swirl of flames that danced like mourners around him. The antler he had wielded lay cracked beside him, its once gentle curve warped by heat. Surtur watched him for a moment, a flicker of something like respect passing through the fire giant's burning gaze. Then Surtur moved on, the flames singing their final verses behind him. The cries of battle had faded, only the crackling of fire remained. And beneath that sound, a deeper rumble pulsed, the heartbeat of a world unraveling. The sky opened, the very fabric of existence tore like cloth. Stars fell, leaving bright streaks that vanished before they touched the ground. Each one, extinguished, felt like a sigh released by the cosmos. The constellations dimmed, the black canvas above grew bare. At last, Surtur lifted his sword again. The blade rose slowly, its light cutting through smoke and steam in a long arc. And then, with a motion as graceful as a falling leaf, he brought it down. The flames surged upward, higher than mountains, higher than the sky, higher than anything the realms had ever known. They wrapped around the 9 realms, curling through worlds that were already collapsing. Fire and water met with a soft hiss, steam weaving gentle veils between ruin and rebirth. The last pieces of the old world dissolved into that haze, melting earth, scorched sky, shattered stone, and drifting starlight. Yggdrasil groaned once more. Its vast trunk bowed, its branches rattled like ancient bones, and then, as quietly as a sigh, the great tree fell. It did not crash, it did not break with violence. It simply lowered itself, its roots loosening their hold on the soil of creation, its limbs folding like the arms of someone weary after a long journey. The sound that escaped it was soft, a whisper older than any language. And then there was nothing. No flame, no water, no stone, no sky. Only a vast, gentle darkness, warm in places, cool in others, shifting like a dream not yet formed. A darkness that felt less like an end, and more like a beginning waiting to breathe. Time passed in a way that was not time. Moments dissolved into one another like drops of ink in still water. The darkness held its silence carefully, cradling the remnants of all things, ashes of gods, embers of stars, whispers of stories. Nothing stirred, nothing moved, everything rested. And then a faint glow. A soft murmur, a spark. Light bloomed, small at first, like a firefly wandering through a vast forest. But it grew, expanding with the tenderness of dawn. The darkness shifted, pulling back as though allowing the newborn glow to take its place. From the ashes of the old world, a new earth began to rise. Green shoots broke through soot-covered soil, their tips shimmering with dew that had never known a sky. Streams formed from melted ice and forgotten rain, their waters clear, their songs gentle. The sun returned, not the sun that Skirl had devoured, but a new one, bright and warm, carrying the promise of a gentler age. Its light kissed the land softly, awakening the fields, warming the stones, inviting breath back into the world. From the depths of Yggdrasil's fallen trunk, a hidden grove opened. Within it, two humans, Leif and Lifthrasir, awoke. They stretched beneath the young sun, their eyes filled with quiet wonder. They were not afraid, for the new world welcomed them with open soil and clear skies. They stepped into the dawn of the next age hand in hand, their footprints the first marks upon a land reborn. And they were not alone. From distant places, gods who had survived the twilight began to gather. Vidar, silent and steadfast. Vali, stern but unbroken. Magni and Modi, sons of Thor, carrying Mjolnir between them with reverent care. Balder and Hertha emerged from the realm of the dead, their steps light, their eyes clear, their hearts free from shadow. They looked over the new world with soft awe, seeing in it the beginning their father had once dreamed of. In the distance, waves lapped gently against fresh shores. Birds sang, wind danced with young leaves. The air carried no scent of fear or fire, only of possibility, and so the cycle continued. Not with the violence that ended the last world, but with the quiet, patient breath of renewal. Life sprouted where ashes had fallen. Hope bloomed where storm clouds had gathered. The world, once broken, began again. No one knew what stories would grow from this new dawn. No prophecies had been written for this era. No fates had been woven yet. Only possibility remained soft, wide, and waiting. Above it all, in the calm after destruction, the faintest whisper seemed to drift through the air as though the universe itself were speaking a gentle truth. Every ending is simply the door to another beginning. Every star that fades leaves room for new constellations. And even the death of gods cannot silence the quiet, enduring song of existence. Rest now, my friend. For the long night has passed, the fires have cooled, the storm has emptied itself, and the new dawn rises soft and calm, inviting you to breathe deeply, slowly, and peacefully as we prepare for the final chapter of this long, gentle journey. After the fires of Ragnarök dimmed, and the last echoes of battle faded into the silent dark, the world rested. It rested in stillness so complete that even the ashes seemed to hold their breath. The sky, once torn open by flames and falling stars, now softened into a gentle gray, the color of a new beginning not yet touched by light. Slowly, the fires withdrew. Their harsh glow flickered one final time, then sank into quiet embers lost beneath the cooling earth. The ocean, once roaring with venom and storm, began to calm, its waves settling into long, soft breaths against the shore. Steam drifted upward in ghostly curls, disappearing into the hushed air like memories returning to the sky. And then, from beyond the horizon of this newborn silence, a new sun rose. Not the sun devoured by Skirl, but a fresh, young sun, its warmth tender and its light as gentle as a hand placed softly on a sleeping shoulder. The rays fell across the broken land with a kindness the old world had forgotten. They touched the blackened stones, the cracked mountains, the quiet waters, and the pale sprouts beginning to push through the ash. Everything glowed with the promise of renewal. From the stillness around Yggdrasil's fallen trunk, life began to stir. Tiny shoots of green slipped through the scorched soil, lifting their heads toward the new light. They trembled like small hearts learning to beat for the first time. Birds, unseen for ages, returned on silent wings, settling on the softening branches of a world rediscovering its breath. And one by one, the surviving gods stepped into the dawn. First came Vidar, the silent god, his steps steady, his presence calm. He had avenged Odin, but he carried no pride, only the quiet dignity of one who did what fate required. Now he lowered his gaze upon the new earth gently, as though greeting a child waking from a long sleep. Beside him walked Vali, young, thoughtful, born once to set right the wrongs done to Balder. His face held neither sorrow nor triumph now, only the wonder of seeing a world beginning anew. From another path came Magni and Mothi, the sons of Thor. Between them they carried Mjolnir, its surface still warm with the memory of thunder. They held the hammer with reverence, knowing their father's strength flowed through it, knowing it would once again bring protection to those who needed it. The hammer did not blaze or spark now. It hummed softly, content to rest in gentle hands. Then, across the brightening field, two figures emerged. Figures long mourned, long missed, long held in the hearts of gods and mortals alike. Balder stepped forward first, the light of the new sun gathering around him as though delighted to meet him. His smile, soft and serene, seemed to heal the air itself. He moved with a grace untouched by the suffering of the old world, a being reborn into peace. At his side walked Hertha, his blind eyes open and clear, his steps steady on the gentle earth. The bitterness of their old tragedy was gone. What remained was brotherhood restored, simple, honest, whole. They walked together as if the world had been waiting for the moment their hands brushed across new grass. The gods gathered in a loose circle upon the warming ground, the young sun resting on their shoulders, the calm wind weaving between them. None spoke at first, there was no need. The silence was full, gentle, sacred, a silence of beginnings rather than endings, and far from them, hidden deep within the grove nurtured by the remains of Yggdrasil, two humans stirred. They were Lif and Lifthrasir, the quiet seeds of humankind's future. They opened their eyes to the soft glow filtering through leaves, their breaths rising in unison, gentle and pure. They looked around the grove, seeing the tender shoots and the soft moss beneath them, and felt no fear. The world greeted them with calm earth, clear air, and the distant hum of new rivers forming. They rose slowly, holding hands, their steps light on the soil of a world washed clean. When they stepped into the sun, its warmth wrapped around them like an old friend. They smiled small smiles, but full of wonder. They walked toward the future without hesitation, as though instinctively knowing that life had been waiting for them. From the hills above, the gods watched, not as rulers, not as distant beings of power, but as quiet guardians standing at the threshold of a new chapter. They felt a peace the old world had rarely allowed, a peace without burden, without prophecy, without fear. For the first time in ages, Odin's sons did not carry the weight of war. Thor's children did not carry the echo of storms. Balder did not carry the shadow of death. Hertha did not carry the memory of guilt. They stood simply as witnesses to life returning. The world was smaller now, younger, gentler. The scars of Ragnarök lay everywhere, blackened earth, fallen stones, silent horizons. But from those scars sprang delicate blossoms of green. New rivers carved fresh paths through softened soil. The air shimmered with clarity. Birds cried across the sky, their calls bright and clean. And slowly, with the quiet patience of dawn, a new age began. Not with fanfare or thunder, but with soft breaths, rustling leaves, and the warm glow of a sun rising over a peaceful horizon. The gods walked down into the fields, their steps merging with the footsteps of Lif and Lifthrasir. No titles separated them, no wars defined them. They shared the same sky, the same ground, the same quiet dawn. And with this simple gathering, a new chapter opened, a chapter where the world breathed again, where peace was not a dream but a reality, where the wounds of the past softened beneath new growth. A cycle had ended, another had begun, calm, gentle, and full of promise. The stars would come again one day, stories would rise once more, but for now, for this quiet moment, the world rested in balance, and all who walked upon it breathed the same soft, hopeful air. Rest well with them, my friend, for this is the peace after the storm, the hush after the final breath of ancient gods, the slow, beautiful beginning of something new, a world reborn beneath a tender sun. And now, my friend, as we come to the final moments of this long northern journey, let your breath soften, let your thoughts settle like snow falling onto quiet earth. We have walked together from the first spark in Ginnungagap, through the birth of gods and giants, through mischief and sorrow, through storms and endless winter, through the twilight of the world and into the gentle dawn that came after. We followed Odin as he sought wisdom beneath the world tree. We watched Thor learn humility in the halls of giants and face his destiny in the ocean's dark breath. We saw Loki glowing with cleverness in the early days, and later breaking under the weight of grief until shadow and sorrow shaped his final steps. We witnessed Baldur's fall the moment light dimmed and every heart in Asgard trembled. We stood in silence as Fimbulwinter covered Midgard in 3 long winters. We heard the echo of Heimdall's horn, felt the ground shake as Jörmungandr rose, and watched the sky burn beneath Surtur's sword. Then came darkness, and after that, a soft new light, a world beginning again, reborn from ash and memory. This is the spirit at the heart of Norse mythology, a quiet, steady truth whispered through every story. Everything moves in cycles. Life rises, life falls, and from what is broken, something new always grows. It is the rhythm of the cosmos, the pulse beneath the bark of Yggdrasil, the breath of the seasons, the turning of night into dawn. Even gods fall, even worlds end, but nothing truly stops. It transforms, it shifts, it begins again in a quieter, softer way. The Norse people carried this understanding through long winters, through storms at sea, through years when life felt uncertain and harsh. They told these stories not to frighten themselves, but to remind one another that even the coldest night will someday thaw, and even the deepest grief will someday open a door to renewal. In every tale, there is both fierceness and tenderness, both courage and sorrow, both loss and rebirth. Like the world tree, their stories hold opposites in balance, fire and frost, darkness and dawn, endings and beginnings. And perhaps, as you rest now in the softness of this final chapter, you can feel that balance, too. The strength of Thor, the wisdom of Odin, the complexity of Loki, the purity of Balder, the patience of the Norns, the quiet endurance of Yggdrasil itself. All of them echo the same truth. Life is not a straight line, but a circle. What ends today plants the seeds of tomorrow. What fades makes room for what will one day bloom. What falls teaches us how to rise again. So as this story drifts away like smoke from a dying fire, let it leave something warm in your chest, a calm acceptance that everything moves, shifts, and renews. You have traveled through creation and destruction, through gods and monsters, through shadows and starlight. You have listened to the rise and fall of a world older than memory, and now you stand at its new beginning. Let the quiet of this moment wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let the final echoes of distant myth fade gently into the background, like a lullaby humming just beneath the wind. You have reached the end of the tale, but not the end of its meaning. Stories, like worlds, cycle through us. We remember them, we carry them, we let them settle into the places that needed them most. So close your eyes now, if you have not already. Feel the gentle pull of sleep waiting at the edge of your thoughts. Feel the peaceful hum of a world reborn, steady and warm, cradling you like dawn cradles the quiet earth. Thank you, truly, for walking this long road of myths with me, for listening, for breathing softly with each chapter, for letting these ancient voices resonate in your heart. May your night be calm. May your dreams be kind. May the new dawn greet you with gentle light, just as it greeted Lif and Lifthrasir as they stepped into the world's new beginning. Rest well, my friend. Sleep peacefully, and let the echoes of the north fade into a quiet, soothing silence as the music slowly drifts away. Good night.